morning and welcome to Friday's OTB AM. I've forgotten what the running order looks like. How are you getting on? Welcome to the show, with you until 10 this morning, and an absolutely jam-packed show for you as well. Shane, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian. Good morning, everyone.
I'm really looking forward to a little bit later on to getting stuck into the meat and drink of the game. Shane, it was such the ebb and flow, all the game played out. You weren't watching the game, you were at the cinema last night.
Got the highlights, and the main highlight, which was Pep Guardiola's.
You don't need to be apologising for it or detract from the fact that you were at the cinema last night.
I make no apologies. My third time at the cinema in less than a week, I would say. Avatar: The Way of Water, the new Avatar film, is what I went to see last night in IMAX. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
And assault on the senses with the 3D glasses on. So having the sister went, and it was an enjoyable experience. You felt like you were there,
Right. Was it a thread on from the original? Not that anybody can remember the original.
It is a thread on.
Right.
Now it is probably a set years later anyway, but it is definitely a continuity piece. Don't think it's based on a true story, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But I went to see North Circular at the start of the week, and I saw.
Any good?
Very good.
Right.
Brilliant. The history of the North Circular Road and the cobblestone and Mountjoy Prison. There's loads in it. And Gemma Dunleavy is one of the.
It's got an extended run at the cinema as well, which is always a good sign. Yeah.
I think it was a sign that more people wanted to see it. And then A Man Called Otto I went to see the other night as well.
Oh yeah, any good? Yeah, I heard you rabbling on about that. Do you not get fed up with the cinema? I love going to the cinema, and I don't get there anywhere near as much as I would like with young kids, whatever. But I love the idea of it.
The Hannon family are big cinema goers.
Would you? Yeah.
The brother has a season ticket for Omniplex.
Stop.
Which
what does that involve? You just go anytime you want, or
you get cheaper overall if you go in X amount of times during the year, which he absolutely does.
Right.
But I love it. Yeah, just a chance to escape the world, Adrian, and just leave this little planet.
I'm off for that.
Yeah. No, I did get the highlights of the City-Spurs.
No, we're not asking you to explain yourself, Shane. That's absolutely fine. Just good context for our viewers when it comes to discussing the show, and you're rabbiting on about something that you haven't seen. I
did a lot of reading on it last night, I have to say, and a lot of watching of post-match interviews, but. I came out of the cinema looking at the live score thinking, please be a crap 0-0 that I missed. And then I saw Spurs were 2-0 up at half time, and the City came back. I was like, that sounds like it was a good game.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was a very good game, and Pep wasn't happy either way.
We were first guests of the morning, standing by in a couple of moments time, so we don't have a huge amount of time to get into it. But if you have any thoughts, if you were actually watching the game last night, and you've any thoughts about that,
or if you're at the cinema, let us know what you thought of Avatar.
Equally, if you were at North Circular or Avatar, any of the above, I think that's the less likely option this morning, but please do feel free to drop a comment to the old YouTube there, whatever you're having yourself. I did think, just very briefly in the game, that before it I thought, wow, this would be, what an opportunity. If Spurs could win, in the unlikely scenario where Spurs could win this game, what a squeeze that puts at the top. The excitement, the narrative from our point of view, that starts to build. Arsenal's lead, obviously, at that point looks a little healthier.
Yeah.
The top of the table is so much more squeezed. The talking points get much more. And I thought, that ain't happening anyway. And then at half time, this is on. City not looking good. No fire in the belly. No fire.
And the fans were crap as well, apparently, according to Pep.
Well, they were booing them off at half time.
Yeah.
I do think that was more related to the fact that they conceded just before half-time, so it's sort of fresh in the mind. I don't know. I mean, maybe City fans are such a fickle bunch that they get to boo at that point. But
I don't even think he cared about the booing. It was more the fact that they were dead quiet in the first half. They lived up to the empty-had name in many ways, but then the second half, they're brilliant, the fans. And all of a sudden, as soon as City get one goal, pull the one goal back, they're all over them. So I think Pep had a couple of good points, but it struck me as a man who's getting embroiled in a title race and wants to maybe have a bit of mind games going. I don't think that was directed necessarily at the City players or the City fans. I always feel like there's an ulterior motive with Pep Guardiola.
A few comments coming in. Chris Hughes, good morning to you, saying that Conte needs the sack, and I'm a Spurs fanatic, and it's a topic that we are going to come back to because it's definitely taken legs, and the man himself is not doing a huge amount to dampen it down either. So thanks for that comment, and we will come back to that, Chris, a little bit later in the show. 7:35, it's Friday morning. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 this morning. Ronan O'Gara standing by ahead of a weekend of an interesting week for Irish rugby, of course, and another weekend of Heineken Champions Cup to come. Alan Quinlan as well will take on some of that chat from 8 this morning. We'll go around the world with the stories that didn't make the cut with Shane at 25 past. It didn't make the cut, I think, for a reason, but listen, nevertheless, this is the home for that. 8:35, the sports news. Martin Lipton, football writer, will join us to reflect on the game last night and look ahead to the weekend as well at 10 to 9 this morning. And then Meath footballer Emma Duggan as the Lidl National Football Leagues get underway this weekend. No home for Meath Dublin, or no natural home anyway, will certainly be one of the talking points with Emma. That is at 10 past 9 this morning, so do get your comments coming into to us over the course of the day. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It is 7:35. Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Hi Adrian. Shane.
How are you keeping? You in Northampton?
No. We're going at lunchtime, so just a little bit of a loosener this morning, and then on our way. It's freezing over here at the minute, but I hope it's better in Northampton. But
well, if over here is anything to go by, it's probably something similar. We just need the game to go ahead, you know. Is there a chance it won't?
No, I don't know, but just we already had one debacle going to Ulster, and then arriving there, and then no chance of a game, and then getting in a bus. So we've kind of had our fun time on the bus. We could do with just hopefully a straightforward travel experience this weekend.
Do you sit at the front of the bus, Rog? Is it unlike your playing days where you're probably at the back messing, or is it a middle of the bus? Or is it assigned seats? Or
No. Yeah, it's front of the bus. Yeah, when you're meant to be responsible.
well worded. What was your first thought when you saw the Ireland squad yesterday?
It shows the quality involved. Obviously, there's some, I think is it James Hume, Joey Carberry, Kieran Treadwell, and there was 37 names, isn't there?
Yeah.
It shows like that it's. Three into each position is 45, obviously. So you're talking about serious quality, but obviously the standout was Joey Carberry. Yeah, it's, I think he has 37, 39 caps for Ireland, isn't it? And has contributed to all the big moments gone as far back as the first time Ireland beat New Zealand in Chicago. He was central to that. It's a shattering blow for him, no doubt about it, but he has to reply now, and he has plenty of time, contrary to what people might think. He just needs to, I think, make a little bit of improvements in his own game. And the great thing about, I think, Joey Carberry is when he's humming, he's in that kind of top class category. It's probably a great opportunity for him to realise what his point of difference is. I think he's a fantastic instinctive player, and maybe he's burdened down with structure. Maybe he needs to, I think, marry the best of his game with what the best of the coaches want out of him, because he's a kid who, I think if I'm right, grew up playing in New Zealand and then moved to Ireland. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So he has all that catch pass and excellent running lines, and his ability to glide. Very, very, very athletic. And I think is better probably when he's allowed to play the game freer. He seems to, over the last number of years, have become bogged down with structure, and for me that's a perfect example of a non-structured player trying to play a structured game. I think he's brilliant loose. That's his point of difference for me. He needs to just go express himself.
I presume a lot of that structure has obviously come from the coaches and a game plan, and he's trying to fit within that. Like, it's a hard position for him to be in when obviously Andy Farrell is the one making the call here alongside Graham Rowntree, obviously at provincial level, and they're giving him a game plan, like a structure almost, and then he feels maybe in some level that he's got to fit within that, and then like you're saying, he does tend to play some of his best rugby when he's playing that bit freer. How do you marry those things?
Yeah, and it's about getting your message across as a coach to him too as well. I think where you create frameworks and structure is for guys that aren't, we'll say, athletic freaks who can't or struggle to get the better of a one-on-one with a guy. So, for example, I think for me, you have a great contrast in the fact that Ross Byrne's game management is absolutely excellent because of the fact, I think, he understands that Joey Carberry, for example, and it's probably a head-to-head here, which makes it even tastier in the fact that Joey Carberry's probably athletic ability is better than his, but what Ross Byrne thinks he can do is he can manage the game and see the game quicker and put his team in a position better than Joey Carberry can. Joey Carberry, for me, probably doesn't need 3 options in the same system. He needs 2. While when I used to play the game, I was probably a more systems game manager kind of player than a guy with athletic ability. So that for me is the key difference. I think it's Joey's capacity is to stay in the moment and kind of can he just play instinctively as much as he can, while me, Ross Byrne, would be kind of manipulating the opponents by trying to think 2 or 3 phases ahead of where the play potentially could be, if you can follow me.
You've touched on it.
No, would you?
You touched on it, Ronan, in your Irish Examiner piece column this morning, and almost on the brutality of sport, and you referenced John O'Gibbs losing his job this week as well. But I think when you're talking about Carberry, you're saying, look, he needs to almost find a mirror and listen to the reply. Like that, is that? I hear what you're saying. It's probably an opportunity.
No, fine. To explain that better. Find a mirror. No, because you won't. Listening to the reply isn't the solution. You've got to speak openly and honestly to it, because listening to it I'm experiencing that coaching at the minute. I've tried to give my message to certain players in La Rochelle this week, especially. I've gone onto the pitch for one-on-ones, but the conversation always ends with yes, but and if. But and ifs, there's no place for them at top level sport, and that's it's not a reflection on the player, it's a reflection on me that I haven't stimulated something in his thought process that he is seeing what I'm trying to say, and it's very simple yet very complicated. And then after maybe 20 minutes, the message got passed through, but for the first 19 minutes it wasn't hitting the target that I wanted it to hit. And it's exactly that. When you look into the mirror, you have to take the most difficult version out there. It's me, 2000 Twickenham, 0 out of 5 kicks. The easy thing to say is, or listening to the mirror is saying, this will be okay. You get another chance to do it. But if you keep doing what you always did without making tweaks in your technique or in your mental capacity to perform, you'll end up with failure again. And that's separates good from great. The fact is that I knew under pressure, be it having strength in my legs or having strength in my mind, that my technique wasn't up to performing in front of 80,000 people in Twickenham. But it was absolutely crushing trying to deal with that, because you have 3 months of not having a ball to kick, and then you have to wait for first pre-season. There isn't a game in pressure for other people in a pre-season friendly, but for me it felt like going and playing another European Cup final, because it's your first chance to get on the road to rehabilitation. It's the same for Joey Carberry this week. He's left out. He's gone from 2nd to 4th. I'd say worst case scenario, he probably thought he was going to be 3rd, but sport changes very, very quickly, but it won't change unless players have the capacity and coaches have the capacity to take messages out of the moments of disappointment. And it's worse as a coach, because at least with players you have the support of the dressing room. When you're the coach, you have very few mates, and and that's why I just referenced John O'Gibbs, because he let me grow in my role in La Rochelle, and then it ended up that I ended up taking essentially the number 1 role when he was kind of targeted by Claremont to go there. And he had, I think, a very good plan that was probably on its way to finding its feet, yet injuries came into play, and I suppose external forces. And then I think for John's sanity, he has to understand that he's in France, and these things happen, as opposed to probably other rugby environments. There's a little bit more, shall we say, stability, but it's changing, and you could see that probably with Eddie Jones's decision for him to be removed. It was trialled by social media.
Excuse me. He's gone, Ronan, from Joey Carberry. Like, he wakes up this morning and he's gone from pretty much guaranteed number 2 with Ireland to number 4 at the minute. And his number 2 at Munster has leapfrogged him into the Ireland setup. He's probably looking at his provincial position and wondering sort of exactly what sort of ground he's at with that, and I'm sure he's having conversations with Graham Rowntree about all of that. We'll see what the team which way the team selection goes, of course, for Sunday. But it feels like the most, and he's had injuries and such a winding path, obviously, given coming from Leinster and down to Munster up to this point. It feels like the most pivotal time in the career now of Joey Carberry. Yeah,
like in that position, you take an awful lot of belts. It's up to him now how he replies. He can control his attitude. He can control his preparation. He can't control Crowley. He can't control Johnny Sexton. He can't control Ross Byrne. But that's okay. I think he just makes a plan. He's got to understand that it won't be plain sailing getting back to where he wants to go. But I think with his capacity and talent, he has there's a huge upside to him. And I think which probably comforts me a lot in this, because it's a position that I enjoy and probably understand well. He has Mike Prendergast there, who has huge, I suppose, empathy for players, and I think he'll use Jack Crowley and Joey Carberry to the best of their ability to get the best out of them. And don't forget, for Munster, it was Joey Carberry who was starting 10, so he's had a nice vote of confidence, where a month or 6 weeks ago it could have been, and we're talking about ruthless scenarios, the same for Joey Carberry in Munster as it is at present for Keith Earls and Conor Murray, where they're left out of the 23.
Yeah.
So he hadn't that, so it's not, it's a belt, but I think that this is the belt that's highlighted. But when you're involved in it, you understand that there's potential belts and disappointments, and for every disappointment there's an upside for another player.
I guess the comeback side of Joey Carberry's brain is fairly well trained as well, Ronan, given all the injuries he's had to come back from as well. So in some ways, if there's one player that you would say can come back from a knock like this, or a bruise to the ego, it probably is Joey Carberry.
No, there's loads of other players, Shane. There's loads of other players. It happens at this level. The further you go along in Test rugby, the more knocks and question marks you get examined at a higher level. You get ripped up and down and torn inside out by people, by everyone. Everyone has an opinion. So whether you're in the squad or not in the squad, this has happened for so many players throughout the years. It will continue to happen. It's par for the course. You've got to just be extremely selfish in how you want to respond, and I'm confident he will respond.
But are some players better at dealing with those knockdowns than others? Like, say you're having a, without naming names, you're meeting La Rochelle players and you're having to give bad news to some players. Are you thinking in your head, okay, he's going to take this okay, but he mightn't be too great taking this news? Like, is it a very individualistic thing?
Yeah, it is, of course, but also there's different, I suppose, levels to it, and the fact that I'm dealing with club players, you're dealing with test animals. They're different. There's a reason they're test players, because their fundamentals are strong. So mentally, a lot of test players are stronger than club players for a good reason. So I think, players will have a process, and they'll have a mental skills coach, and they'll be able to, I suppose, air their dirty laundry was probably the word we use in our time, and get everything off their chest. But once you get that off your chest, you can't continue to moan and grumble. You got to kind of see the opportunities and make a plan for it. But I can guarantee you it won't be just all rosy. He's going to have to make a plan, and obviously what has changed is that he doesn't have momentum, or he's not the incumbent in the team anymore. So usually in that scenario, you have to do probably 20 or 30% more than the guys that are picked ahead of you. But I think the growth in his game, I think that window is very evident, that when he's humming, he's very, very, very interesting.
What, and conversely, obviously the other two lads, Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley, are licking their chops and show this morning and seeing that the path is suddenly open up in front of them a little bit. What's your sense of what the best mix of, who's the best of those two to have as a replacement to Johnny Sexton if he's fit starting the Six Nations?
That's an interesting question. I think if you're starting a game tomorrow, Ross Byrne, I just think that He's improved dramatically, and that's a strong word, but I would think that's. I think he warrants that. I think his core skills are underappreciated, and I think what is evident is in that position more so is the response he gets from his players. I think when he plays in blue, or when Leinster play in blue, or whether they play in blue or white, when the Leinster play, there's utmost trust in Ross Byrne when he plays for Ireland, and that's probably down to probably not getting a run of games as well. That trust isn't there. Because it's harder to earn it, I suppose, against people that you're not training with every day of the week. But if Ross Byrne can transfer his Leinster form into an Irish form, it's he's very, very shrewd at managing games. I suppose where the question marks arise are just in terms of you have one guy who's world class at the other end of the spectrum in terms of managing a team and driving standards, and then you have two other rookies, maybe it's probably too strong a word for driving a team at international level, but this Six Nations it's going to be imperative that the backup 10s get a lot of game time.
I know you'd said on this show before, Ronan, that Jack Crowley was someone you'd wanted to get over to France, to La Rochelle. Like, can we take from that then that people like Ross Byrne, there's opportunities there for players like Ross Byrne potentially down the line to make moves abroad as well? Is that something that you've kind of had in the back of your head as well?
What are you trying to say? Do you want me to sign Ross Byrne this morning? Is it?
You don't have to sign him. We can get the process started, I guess.
There's you're talking about the number one ranked team in the world. These are serious quality players. There's huge demand for them. But Leinster are the most consistent team in Europe, whatever, the last 10 years. And they're looking to drive the game to new standards, and they want Ross Byrne central to that. People are smart. They're not going to be just because Ross Byrne is playing the backup role to Johnny Sexton. You need two in every position, and Leinster are lucky to have both of them.
You mentioned earlier on just about Keith Earls and Conor Murray, but obviously not making the Munster cut, and I'm sure there's part of Joey Carberry this morning again that's waking up thinking, how come these lads managed to get the cut, make the cut for Ireland, and I'm not there if it's based on form. What's your sense of all that?
Very simple. Yeah. Very simple. You establish relationship with players. What's I think not up for debate is that Conor Murray and Keith Earls have 12, 13 years of credit on big days. That counts. If there's a final tomorrow, or Six Nations, Grand Slam decider, World Cup, in my makeup would be leaning towards giving the nod to experience as opposed to a really exciting young player that may win you the game but may also lose you the game. I think there's more of a chance that Conor Murray, Keith Earls will win you a game than lose you a game.
Yeah, and he's got to strike that balance obviously between some of the younger players that are in there with not 100%. No caps, yeah.
And that's where there's Andy Farr is very skilled at doing and excellent at doing. You can't have 6 in that category for Earls and Murray. You can have those 2, but that's 2 of 37. But I think they're different arguments for either of them. And the fact that Keith Earls is just coming back and looking to find his form again, but I think has the capacity to start a test match for Ireland easily. Conor Murray is obviously playing backup to, the mantle has shifted to Gibson Park, and can't have much complaints about that. But in terms of, I suppose, looking to close out a game or finish a game, I suppose Conor's capacity to see that game a little bit better than Craig Casey at the minute may be the reason why they're leaning that way.
Just a final one for me, Ronan. You're writing again this morning about and it's fascinating, dealing with disappointments in rugby, and you're talking about the La Rochelle players who maybe had to let go last year, possibly watching the Champions Cup final against Leinster and supporting Leinster at one point last year. And I think you talk about wanting, New Zealand to beat Ireland in 2013. It was the only time you wanted your country to lose. So sport's a funny thing. Like, when you're let down and when you're disappointed, you take that with you.
Go on, explain that to me. You take what with you?
Well, I guess the disappointment of either being dropped from a squad or from finishing your career, you're left in a position where you're not necessarily supporting, depending on how it finished with the team or with the country, you're not necessarily supporting them in big games.
It's so personal, I suppose. That's the thing. No one, especially when you're that player, no one sees it like you see it. And it was just, I suppose, from whatever 2000 to 2013, all I ever wanted to do was to beat New Zealand, you know. But unfortunately, how they were painted to me, having spent time there, wasn't how I perceived them. So I obviously put them on a pedestal that they didn't need to be put on. But that's with hindsight. I didn't have hindsight in the live, and I just remember, I was working for RT at that game. And I just finished, I think, that summer, and this was the November International. So, I think those first 24 months when you're an ex-pro are very difficult. And then you just question everything you stand for is kind of, okay, first game, probably second or third test match after you retire, and you just see, these guys are going to beat New Zealand, and you've tried for 13 years to beat them, and you're just like, oh no, that can't happen today. Don't let that happen. Come on, I stand for a little bit more than that. But it was good learning that day. After that, I was, I'd be a liar to say if I wasn't not happy but relieved when Ryan Crotty scored that try, because a draw isn't the same as a loss. I just didn't want Ireland to beat New Zealand for the first time after I retired. Yeah, it's very selfish, but that's me.
That's sport, and that's you, and that is you. Good luck at the weekend. La Rochelle train keeps rolling. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Good to chat. Thank you.
Cheers. It is coming up on 8 o'clock on this Friday morning. His La Rochelle team off to Northampton this weekend after that narrow win over Ulster last weekend, and very much in good position in the Heineken Champions Cup as well. We're going to have Alan Quinlan on very shortly to pick up on all of that. You can certainly imagine that Joey Carberry is going through right range of emotions this morning. That his we've definitely gone from a position where he was guaranteed number 2. No question about him ever being number 1 as long as Johnny Sexton was on the radar. And in some regards, anybody who comes after Johnny Sexton or anybody who's competing for his position, it's a really unfair benchmark, because he's been in the conversation about being the best out half in the world for the best part of the last decade. He's been in that conversation, so it's a very unfair benchmark. I do feel, even reading between the lines what Ronan is saying in relation to Jack Crowley particularly, that it feels like he's the heir apparent, to be honest. Now look, I know that we have lumped on from Ian Madigan to Billy Burns to whoever you're having yourself, the Rangers, the Harry Byrne, Ross Byrne, I've all been in the mix at some point, or Ben Healy when he was going really well for Munster when he came on the scene, and that ain't happening, of course. But so I'm sure he's gone through the right ringer this morning of all the range of emotions. I'm sure there's the public aspect to it as well. It plays out so bloody publicly. Very hard for him to get through all of that, I'm sure. And even for this weekend, does he start against Toulouse, or does Graham Rowntree see the way the wind is blowing and put Jack Crowley in there?
For him, he needs to start, doesn't he? You're thinking from Joey Carberry's perspective, the best thing for him is...
Well, he's knocking on Graham Rowntree's door going, I don't care what happens this weekend. Put me in that team. It's the one weekend where, and he doesn't seem overly, I don't know what sort of a character Joey Carberry is behind the scenes. He doesn't overly seem on the pitch as if, and look at again, this is I'm adding to the unfair comparisons with Johnny Sexton, but he doesn't seem like that same player who's got that major force of personality to be barking and roaring at people around him. So I can't imagine he's barking and roaring at Graham Rowntree, but you would think of any week he's in there knocking on the door going, put me in, coach. I'm not having a debate about it.
Has to. I'd love to see Joey Carberry play this weekend and play really well. I think everyone would. It's not the end of Joey Carberry. We were saying it yesterday, as Ronan said, 40 odd caps. He's got so much experience that he'll be back. And look, that was the point I was trying to make. Those injuries, I think, have built an even stronger Joey Carberry psychologically. So I think this could be the start of something even positive for Joey Carberry, as strange as that may sound this morning for him.
David O'Connor, good morning to you, David. Ronan O'Gara's self-awareness is fantastic. No wonder he's an excellent coach. Des Kirby, is it a sign of how well Irish rugby is doing that we now have rival nations taking players? Healy and Cooney, he says, well, Healy anyway, I don't think Scotland have come in for Cooney just yet. And if you listen to the thoughts of journalists from Scotland, it doesn't seem like as if there's going to be too much interest in him down the track. We shall see. Mark McGill-Owen wondering, surely Cullum is to be on to come on to talk about Murray yesterday. What a match. Well, we'd have to raise him out of the bed, Mark, because he's on a day off. He ain't coming in. But I agree. I said it to him yesterday.
Oh,
you got to come in. This is
what a game.
Having it.
Jesus.
Bobby Dwyer says easy to say Conte needs a sack, but what's going to change? Problem is the board, Redknapp, Pochettino, Conte, not all back to when they needed to be, and needed at least 3 more quality starters in January. I think that's a very fair point. Right, Alan Quinlan standing by. Back after these.
OTB AM.
OTB Sports Rugby.
One name to win the World Cup. If I was throw one out right now, I would always go back to South Africa.
If France win the first game against New Zealand, I think that sets the tone. I think they're the best team in the world.
I'm going to go Ireland. I'm going to get off the fence once and for all. This is our best chance to win.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Just gone 8 o'clock. You're watching OTB AM. Myself and Shane with you until 10 this morning. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Good. We've just been talking to Ronan O'Gara, obviously, about the obvious in the Ireland squad. What is your sense of, does Joey Carberry, he obviously needs a bit of an arm around the shoulder now from Graham Rowntree. Is he going to get that in the shape of, is he going to start this weekend? Is what I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah, I presume he will start. I think it's obviously very disappointing for him, and it's going to be debated for a couple of weeks now before certainly be probably the rest of this week and the weekend and next week. A lot of people will be writing on it as well, and I think he just needs to. The best thing you can do when you're dropped is to get a performance, go out and play again, and try and put it behind you a little bit. Maybe it'll be the reaction that he needs. I think he's been playing pretty well this year with Munster. It's hard to kind of fault his performances and say he's been playing, well below par or anything like that. That's not the case, but I think it's more a case of Ross Byrne just playing really well and Jack Crowley. I think they obviously see something in Jack Crowley that's impresses them. I think his attitude, his physicality, and also Ross Byrne. He was probably written off after a couple of years ago when he played against England a couple of times, and Ireland's pack was dominated. So I think since coming on for that 20 minutes against Australia in November and kicking that winning penalty and obviously playing really well with Leinster has benefited him as well. So it's unfortunate for Joey Carberry. I do worry a little bit. It's going to affect him one way or the other here to a reaction, or will it really dent his confidence and the perception of the player as well? And if he feels that perception, that becomes more vulnerable. But he's an outstandingly talented player, and we probably have spoken a lot about seeing that kind of full 80-minute performance from Joey Carberry, and that bit of zip in his game that we know he has. So it's disappointing. I've experienced it a lot. I just listened to Ronan there. He probably didn't have to experience being dropped a lot, but it happens to players. And just look what happened. Gavin Coombs in November. He's a younger player, less experienced. Joey Carberry's 37 caps for Ireland, but I think you could also argue that are they all form selections? And I'm sure you're going to probably talk about Conor Murray and Keith Earls as well, and maybe Jacob Stockdale, that they're not form selections, but they're more gut selections from a coach, and a coach has to have the leeway to be able to do that. And you'll always get most coaches will do that, players they trust, and they look at the bigger picture of what they can bring. But for Joey Carberry, I really hope that it's a negative situation now for him, but he just needs to go now and play for Munster, and maybe it'll take a little bit of pressure off him.
Yeah, that's the key point almost that you made there. On one side, he can acknowledge what's going on, see what a pivotal moment it is in his career, and want to go out and, because it's such a big moment, almost force it too much. Like, it's hard to... Can you find a freedom, Quinny, or in your experience, did you find a freedom out of something like that, or did it tighten you up a bit?
The initial part of it, Adrian, is really tough and frustrating, because players will say, and sports people will say, well, we don't listen to the outside world and we don't read the papers, but you feel all that kind of scenario and you feel the spotlight on you and you kind of go, what do my teammates think of me? Well, that's the way I thought of it. I was like, God, it's so difficult to take, and how am I going to react to it? And it's hard at times. But I think once you accept it, and I'm sure, Joe, you mentioned about Graham Rowntree offering him support, but it's also, Mike Prendergast, who he's back to coach in Munster, to look at what he can do better and how he can play with that bit of freedom. And I saw somewhere online someone making a comment, just a rugby supporter, saying that there's been a lot of talk about Joey Carbery for years, trying to get him more structured, and kind of, maybe now that this will loosen him up a little bit, as you say, and make him just not overthink it and overanalyze it. So it can work both ways. You just don't know. But I think he does need a bit of support, and I tell you, the best support you can get is from teammates. Even a text message, players giving you a little tap on the shoulder and say, look, keep the head up, we still believe in you, you get back, and you start to rebuild yourself again. So it's disappointing, but the good thing for Joey Carbery is the World Cup is not for, not till September, and it can change very, very quickly. There can be an injury or two. He could be starting a Six Nations game by the end of it, who knows? And one performance there just changes everything. So he's just got to keep believing, and the support is really important for him. So I think initially it's really tough to take, and you start questioning yourself, am I good enough? What do people around me, the players think of me? Do they trust me? Do they believe in me as well? So I think it's you've got to obviously feel a bit of pain, but going to Toulouse on Sunday isn't your ideal scenario for a bounce back solution. You know what I mean? Because it's a really tough place to go. But he's just got to try and focus and get his performance right, and hopefully the team play well. Munster out there as well from his point of view.
I suppose, Quinny, the most surprising thing that I took from it yesterday morning was that it wasn't a surprise for a lot of people. A lot of people saying, Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley are there on merit in Andy Farrell's squad. When you heard the news yesterday, were you surprised that Carbery hadn't made it?
I was surprised, and my first thought, Shane, was how will this affect the player? And we actually need Joey Carbery. That's what I'm thinking. Is there? It's a big call from Andy Farrell, but the other two players, and you've got to acknowledge this, they deserve to be there. I think. But my worry then is how will it affect Joey Carbery? Like, he's not the most expressive, dominant, vocal player we see in a field. That's not the way he kind of goes about his business, or it's not his temperament. But I was surprised in a sense that, but when you peel it back then and you look at the merits of Jack Crowley and Ross Byrne, you think, well, we shouldn't be that surprised, because, I think Munster have had a really good run recently. I think they've won 6 of their last 8 games, and he's played pretty well in all those games. There's a mistake or two in there, and I think when you analyse probably Joey Carbery's game a little bit, there's a little bit of lateral running still in there. Being square, going to the line and taking contact, and making some line breaks and going into the physical side of it hasn't been probably that zip and spark is we're still looking for it a little bit. He shows glimpses of it, So I was surprised in a sense that, but when you peel it back and you look at the logistics of it and the logic behind the selection, and look, it's probably, I know it's Andy Farrell's team, but Mike Catt as the backs coach will have a big say in the type of backs he wants and the type of game they're going to play and the attack they're going to implement. But he's just got to dust himself down. I keep saying that, and it's far from the end of the world. It's far from a disaster, I think. And this could, if dealt with in the right way, it could even galvanise more support for you sometimes from the fans. You know what I mean? If you come back and you have a game, you can nearly feel the crowd or the support wanting you to do well again, because he's a very popular player with his teammates and with Irish rugby fans. But let's hope he gets a performance on Sunday and plays for Munster then probably the week after, and he's going to have lots of involvements now and gets back on track.
Yeah, and as you say, we'll have plenty of time to talk about the flip side of that, as well as the positive knock-on for Byrne and for Crowley as well down the track. We'll come back to it. One of the players who's been sort of ditched out, like perhaps the Carberry thing, apart from anything else, is a good message and a reminder to everybody else in the squad about, you're guaranteed nothing here. Gavin Coombs is obviously one of those who's been through that, Quinny, in the last number of months, and then comes up with a man of the match performance last weekend, gets included in the squad. I read a quote there from Sean Klein this week comparing him to CJ Stander around his work rate and stuff like that. What has impressed you about Gavin Coombs most recently?
I just think more involvements in the game, and I think that's stuff he would have been working on with the coaches and the feedback you get when you do your analysis. He's an incredible athlete. He's 6'4" or 5", and probably 115 kilos, and powerful, and has pace and real footballing ability. I think more involvements in the game for him, and the more times you can get an athlete like that with the ball in their hands, the better. I think if you compare him to probably one of the best players in the world at the moment, in Caelan Doris, I think there's no reason why Gavin Coombs can't. It's a big ceiling because Doris has been outstanding, but if you watch Doris's game, it's just multiple backup moments all the time, tackles, turnovers to the breakdown, carries, offloads, regular involvements, and you want your number 8 with the ball in his hand a lot because he's a pivotal carrier for you. And I think Gavin Coombs has probably gone back to basics a little bit and just looked for more ball, probably got fitter and sharper in what he's doing. Scores a lot of tries. A lot of these tries are pick and goes because he's very difficult to defend. So that's one of his strengths. You wanted to keep building on that. And if you get close to the line with any team Gavin Coombs is on, you want him picking. So
is he making a World Cup squad?
It depends. I think he's definitely in the mix. He's definitely right up there, and he's giving himself a real shot here. But I think he's got to bring a little bit more of an aggressive kind of temperament to his game, a little bit of no nonsense, and a bit of kind of body language that indicates he's not going to take any rubbish or crap from anyone, and that he's going to be explosive in his defensive work and his carries. So look, I think he has that ability to really, for his game to grow more and more. But you have to, as a background, particularly, I don't think it's ever changed, but in more so in the modern game, you've got to have multiple successive involvements and regular involvements, because obviously playing in the back row and watching back row players, they can really influence games in such a positive way for your team by pressurizing the opposition, making tackles, turnovers. And then the flip side of that, if you have your back row making lots and lots of carries in a game, well, you're usually in a good place and you're usually in a position to be winning games. So I say it again, just Doris, the influence he has in games and the special moments he has. Gavin Coombs has that ability. It just needs to, and they're different players. I don't want to sound unfair and say Gavin Coombs has to be like excuse me, Caelan Doris, spot on like him. He doesn't. He just needs to obviously I think he has an ability to be, an incredible ball carrier on wider channels as well. If he runs onto the ball at pace, and he's a very difficult player to stop. So it's a big opportunity for him. He needs to train well, and he needs to train with a bit of an attitude, and actually not be in the Irish squad saying, well, look, I'm nice and comfortable here in the back row selected, and he needs to fight for a place here and make his presence felt in training as well.
Must be tough for players, Quinny, who are on the outside of the squad or the fringes of the squad, wondering, does Andy Farrell want form, or does he want, players who have that experience? Because you mentioned the likes of Stockdale, and he really has been quite poor of late for Ulster. I know there's been injuries that have hampered him as well, but I mean, players on the fringe of that squad must be looking in, going, how did some of these lads get in? When I'm playing really well for my province, I'd say it's frustrating for some players.
So you could argue, Shane, and it's a good point, that some players could pick up the phone and say, well, there's certain guys in the squad that I don't think they're playing well in the last few weeks. And, I've sat down with coaches over the years and said, well, why aren't you starting me? I'm playing well, and the guys ahead of me are not, their form isn't brilliant at this particular moment, not consistently, because obviously you're not going to be in an Irish squad if you're not a good player, and if you're not able to deliver at international level. Unless sometimes we see it with young players coming in for a period of time, and they need to, go back to their provinces and play more and gain more experience and develop more. But yeah, and he'll know that, Andy Farrell. But I think if you there's no incredible notable omission here that somebody is not in the squad that could be doing that situation, that has a really, really, really strong argument. I think Kieran Treadwell and Nick Timoney can feel a little bit unfortunate. They would be disappointed, obviously, but it does go back to your provincial team and how they're playing as well, and collectively. I think he's looked at Jacob Stockdale and seen that that he's probably gone with a gut feeling there, and when this player has an ability to, score brilliant tries, he's delivered before. He was outstanding in 2018, scoring tries for Ireland. An incredible year it was, and he was pivotal in that. Recently, we haven't seen that spark from Jacob Stockdale. So I think it's trying to give the player a chance and a shot of confidence as well that he's brought back in there. And the coaches do need, whether we as players agree or not, or the fans agree or not, they need to have leeway to go with their gut in some decisions. And it can be hard for other players. Kieran Treadwell is left out of the squad. He was a very important player in New Zealand, and he's not in the squad now. Ian Henderson is back. Joe McCarthy is in there. James Ryan and Ty Byrne, they're the locks. So Caelan Blade could be arguing, saying, well, if it's picked on form, why am I not in the squad? And I should be in the squad. And Conor Murray hasn't played much lately, and he's not been picked by Munster now. So there's a couple of arguments in there. There's no doubt about it. Jordan Larmour being back in the squad is a form selection. Obviously, it's one that jumps out. It's brilliant to have him back. Because when you look at all our back three players, I think, and that's maybe benefited Jacob Stockdale. There's, particularly in the wing situation, there's the depth there, and the amount of players that you can select from isn't kind of jumping off the page. Mike Haley can feel a little bit unfortunate, but I still think he has their attention, and I think he's played very well for Munster. Everybody would acknowledge that. And he may still be a shot for a World Cup. The time is running out for guys who are outside the picture here, who haven't played in a while, because you have 3 warm-up games. I think one of them is after the squad has been picked. You have 5 Six Nations games. So it's a very strong squad, and it's a squad that I think, by and large, 99% of it, is picked. And with players who can deliver performances, but it's still, the World Cup is where we want to see performances in the form. I still think they'll obviously want to do well in the Six Nations, but we're all a bit sceptical and a little bit nervous, particularly what happened in 2019. So it's tough for some players, but it's an exciting kind of journey now in the next few months. And I would say the door is not closed on anyone. And I know coaches say that, but I think for players who are not in it, the Ulster players, those guys, they've got to go out and perform and try and get their team winning again. Yeah,
well, if Carberry goes down and has a man of the match performance on Sunday, suddenly everybody's the clamour is back on again, and we'll see exactly how that plays out. But as you say, look, there's 14 players to come out of that for a match day squad alone, not to mind a World Cup. And when Henshaw comes back, there'll be 5 of those players that won't even be included in the reduced World Cup squad. So plenty for us to get our teeth in over the next few months. Anyway, Quinny, just talk to us a little bit about Sunday. No Jack O'Donoghue, of course, suspended, and clearly missed out in the Ireland squad. 9 points from 3 games from Munster, 6th in the pool, top 8 to go through. The connotations we're not sure about, but they'll know what they have to do before kick-off in that game. Unthinkable that Munster wouldn't go through. They need it.
Yeah, they need to go through. I wouldn't say it's unthinkable, because I think the expectation has shifted this year, particularly with the start of the season they've had. And nobody expects Munster to go and win the European Cup. I think being in the knockout stages would be really important for them. We've seen from the reports, RG Snyman is back training. What a boost he would have. That would be for Munster to have him back, to have a Dogbo back training, Thomas Ahern, Finian Wycherley, to get some of those powerful, a little bit more power back in the squad come the knockout stage. And I think the way they're playing and the way they're developing, I think they'd make it difficult for somebody. Most probably they'll be away if they get through. They're going to be down in that 6th, 7th, 8th position if they get through. But I think the results that they need Stormers to beat Clermont, because that'll push them down. Clermont are on 6 points and they're away to Stormers. If Sale were to beat Ulster with a bonus point, they could go to 10 points. So there's a couple of results there. The Montpellier London Irish game, Montpellier on 7 points. They've got London Irish at home, so you expect them. They're going to get probably 4 to 5 points there and go up. So I think there's just a couple of results there that could push Munster out of it. It could happen, and we've seen stranger things and in this situation a number of times over the years when you get to the last European game. But they will know what they've got to do. But I expect Toulouse, who are top of the pile, they'll want to finish top, and they'll pick a strong team. They always do. And, they're pretty ruthless as well. So it's a pretty daunting task for them, but Munster will know what they have to do. And maybe it will suit them a little, this game, that they can just throw caution to the wind a little bit, which may help them. But they may need a losing bonus point here. It may be the situation, and that's probably the advantage that they'll know. But they've just got to go for it. But it's going to be very, very difficult to beat Toulouse out there. Ulster did it last year. Juan Malia Cruz was sent off for Toulouse, and it made it probably an easier situation. Ulster were hanging on and right at the end of the game, and obviously in the return fixture they came back and beat them in Belfast, which cost Ulster. So you'd never know. But I think I would worry about the power, because you're playing one of the most physical sides in Europe and away from home. But let's see where Munster are at. I think their confidence and their self-belief has increased a lot.
Leinster Racing obviously tomorrow afternoon at the Aviva, and Leinster looking to nail home advantage for all the knockout stages if they can manage a win there, and Racing hanging on after beating Quins at the weekend and still in the hunt then for the last 16. And I mean, we've spent a lot of the morning obviously talking about Joey Carberry, and I think that's legitimate for the day that's in it. We'll spend a lot more time talking about Ross Byrne and on, but I'm sure he's got a real pep in his step now, Quinny, and a real sort of chest out, and been backed by all around him, sure, getting loads of plaudits, pats on the back, and a big opportunity for him now as well to put a stamp on this one. It'll be a lot of focus on him.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And when I played for Munster for when we were successful winning European Cups, I think we had 16, 17, 18, 19 Munster guys in Irish squads consistently. Leinster have 20 guys in this squad. So this is, there's huge kudos in that as well, going into training, seeing 20 guys from your team that are in the national squad. There's a lot of pride in that, and I think they all will have a spring in their step. And for Ross Byrne, yeah, of course, he's going to be delighted. He's back from the wilderness a little bit, and it's a real confidence booster and a perception changer for him as well. So, they've been absolutely ruthless this year, to get 3 bonus point wins, and the manner in which they've won the games. You could debate the opposition, particularly the Gloucester game. The team they sent over in December was pretty shocking, to be honest, but understandable in the sense that they were probably going to be beaten anyway. But I think the performance in round 1 against Racing over there just highlighted the difference here with this Leinster squad and their ability to play, their skill levels, the pace, the tempo, the fitness levels. So I think it's really, this competition is theirs to lose at this stage. They're going to be at home all the way to the final. So it's going to take a special performance for someone to beat them. I don't think Racing are going to. Racing are on 8th in Pool A and 5 points. I don't think they're going to get anything out of this game, and possibly won't make the knockout stages. The advantage for them is the teams behind them are pretty abysmal as well. Gloucester are behind them, Leon on 5 points, and Leon are on 3 points. So Racing could miss out on the knockout stages themselves here. So I think Leinster will just probably take it to another level, given the game is on the Aviva as well. And as I said, they'll be full of confidence and joy this week. That 20.
Breaking up a small bit there, Quinny. I think we might have lost you. Are you with us? You're there. You're back. Give us just very briefly, if you can. Obviously, with Ulster up against Sale, obviously as well tomorrow night. So the Leinster game, the Ulster game, and the Munster game. You're not. It doesn't sound like you're talking about 3 Irish wins there.
Situation for Ulster, playing at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, and there'll be a bit of anger, a bit of bite in what they're trying to do, and they're playing for possibly get into the knockout stages. They're only on 3 points, so a bonus point win is a must for them. So I think Ulster will win the game. I think Leinster will obviously beat Racing, and you never know what happens in Toulouse, but you'd have to say that Toulouse are going to be very, very difficult to stop and will most probably beat Munster. But I have a feeling Munster could cause them a few problems and maybe get something and score some tries when they're there.
All right, let's see how it goes. Quinny, thanks a million. Enjoy the games.
Cheers, thanks lads.
Thanks a lot. Alan Quinlan on the line there, 28 minutes past 8 on Friday morning. You're watching OTBAM. We're delighted to have you with us wherever it is that you're at. The comments are flying in. We're brought to you live each morning, of course, by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. One on YouTube here saying that Derek Flagbanner says 2 rugby slots is crazy when there was a Premier League match last night and a weekend of soccer coming up, says Derek Flagbanner, who sort of forgets that the show is 2.5 hours long. There's plenty of time to get stuck into whatever the hell we want to get stuck into, including the football upcoming. Derek Flagbanner, sit tight. We're going to talk about that in not that long. We'll have Martin Lipton on to reflect on City-Spurs last night and to look ahead to everything else as well. A few more comments coming in. Before we hit the ads, I think, and then come back and chat some football and some other stuff. We're going to keep chatting the football and some other stuff. That's what we're doing? Very good. Some of the comments coming in here. We have O'Toole 1905. Carberry's had multiple chances under Farrell and proved that he isn't at that top international level. Maybe Byrne and Crowley aren't ready. Maybe, but Joey has used all his lives. Paul Heenan saying, I would think lads that Byrne. I would think, lads, that Byrne has got the nod as Leinster look equally as impressive with him at 10 as they do with Sexton. If he can bring that over to the Irish team, happy days. And I've been saying it for a while, he definitely has a boot that would grace any World Cup. And he's been sort of probably unfairly labelled with this, like, sort of doesn't have the X factor sort of stuff, which is one of these intangibles that people tend to use in sport that's hard to kind of benchmark where is he on the X Factor scale today?
Yeah.
But it's also a really nice mix that if you were to go down the old X Factor route, that Jack Crowley has loads of that. Sexton obviously sort of seems to straddle all X Factor, game management, whatever you want at whatever given point you want. But it seems to be, that's why I was kind of interested in Ronan O'Gara's that question about who would you put in as the backup, and he said at this moment I'd go for Ross Byrne, which also felt to me like in a couple of years it's probably going to be Jack Crowley, but just for that blend of, you know, but then equally Crowley, if he has got the X factor and we need somebody to come on and squeeze out a game, depends on who you're playing. Maybe there's just an aspect of horses for courses here.
I think like if Ireland are playing in the World Cup semi-final tomorrow and Johnny Sexton comes off, I think it is Ross Byrne that comes on. Like, I don't think there's many arguments against that. Like, as someone on the YouTube commenters points out, like when Ross Byrne is playing for Leinster, the level doesn't seem to go down a whole pile. I know Sexton brings that experience and what have you, but it's certainly Ross Byrne being on the pitch for Leinster with a strong 15 elsewhere doesn't seem to bring the level down at all.
Yeah, I have to say I was on the school run yesterday and I was tuned in, and you were reading out the squad while you had Ken Doherty on, I was like, did my line just break up there a second? Where's Joey Garber?
It didn't even strike me when I was.
Has he been injured?
Yeah,
but just from a, like, I was really surprised about it.
Yeah,
like, I think it's probably not the wrong call, but equally it didn't seem like it was a path that Andy Farr was that willing to go down.
Cameron Hill called it on the show, was it the day before? He said he thinks Carberry will miss out in the squad and he feels that there'll be a mix of Byrne and Crowley throughout the Six Nations. I mean, it's a big call. Apparently he was throwing the fist out in the office.
Fist to kill. Well, that's very
proven correct.
Uncharitable of him.
A bit like Rog supporting Ryan Crotty's try in 2013. You know, it's you don't feel good about it, but you're giving it the large one.
Listening from Dubai, lad, says Cian Rowe, Spurs have an unbelievable amount of average talent in that team, players who can't control a pass or handle any pressure. To them a couple.
You skipped a comment there, Adrian. Mark Dunning. Adrian, how confident are Crokes ahead of Sunday?
Well, I don't know how confident Crokes are ahead of Sunday. You'd have to ask them that yourself, man.
Fibre in the club.
I presume you're asking me how confident I am.
Confident are you?
I was listening to the Club Championship show, the wonderful Club Championship show during the week with Will and Aisling and Morris Brosnan, and Morris was sort of saying that he felt it was going to be a 1 or 2 point game, and it's really hard to get away from that. I think apart from anything else, it's not going to be a particularly high scoring game. I think that, like, Glenn, obviously they both have shown remarkable abilities to be very pragmatic. Is that how I might word that? It might not be the greatest spectacle of the earth, but I think it'll be good for drama. I do think it'll be good for drama. I think that it will be interesting to see how Crokes try to get a handle on Conor Glass. It'll be fascinating to see. I don't expect Paul Mannion to start, I must say. I do fully expect him to play a significant role. I do expect him to get 20-25 minutes at the end of the game, particularly, and as absolutely expected. I can't see any scenario other than it's really tight going down the stretch, and Crokes are looking to get Walsh in a position to pull off one of his, like, he tends to try. I challenge one of the TV companies to just do Shane Walsh cam for a game, for a club game. Honestly, it's fascinating watch. I've been at this, I think it'll be my 5th club game to go and see Crokes this year, and you end up watching him and what he does, and, like, I've said it a lot, but he's back in the full back line snuffing out chances. There was one brilliant chance in the semi-final that he went back and snuffed out, like, class defender Shane Walsh. Honestly, he could easily pick up a position in Philly McMahon type, Lee Keegan type role. Honestly, he's that good in defence, but obviously he's got a bit going on at the other end,
a little bit silky.
So I expect it to be tight, and I expect, the last minute of added time, Walsh get the ball about 40 yards out at a good bit of an angle, and he'll just craft this unbelievable point over the post.
Yeah, I think that the All-Ireland semi-final last year will have helped. The quarter-final and semi-final coming up against our man Derry. He's used to the little tight nitty Ulster defenders, which Glenn will bring in spades. I don't know who they'll put on him, but I mean, the way Glenn play football, they don't give you much space. And the way Malachy O'Rourke plays football, they don't give you much space. They'll try and catch Kilmacud on the break as well. I can't see anything but a couple of points in it.
I was looking to see, could you get through a whole show without mentioning Malachy O'Rourke?
Straight in there. No, I couldn't not mention Malachy O'Rourke.
But you're going for Glenn.
As in who I think will win. I think Glenn will come out on top.
Bullshit, Shane. That's
I've been saying it from the outset of the Ulster Championship, Adrian. I can't go back.
You can't
now.
jump ship now.
No.
Look at it, and nobody would be surprised with that outcome. I don't think, particularly Crokes obviously have had their card marked after last year's final when there was great expectations and they came up that bit short in the end. Like, that'll probably be a key driver. We know that Robbie Brennan keeps the screensaver on his phone, and I'm sure of course it's a motivating factor for them. But I must say I'm really looking forward to now bringing the two young kids again, and I'm going to play your game of you were recommended during the week, that try and spot something in the stadium. And
I Spy with my little
I Spy,
eye.
yeah.
Something beginning with M. It's Malachy O'Rourke. I'll just keep
I could be struggling. That might keep them going for the whole game.
You see,
they'll get bored of that.
Well, Robbie Brennan was saying hopefully you don't have a Glenn or Mike Cullen. This was before Glenn and Mike Cullen played in the second semi-final. Hopefully I don't have a Glenn player or manager lifting the trophy on my screensaver for the next 12 months. That would make probably me and Robbie Brennan the only people with a Malachy O'Rourke screensaver. Yeah, 100%. There's no arguments there.
Doris has twice the player. Coombs says Mark. That was in response to Quinny's point about Coombs' opportunity. Justin Flynn says, seeing as you continue to ignore Connacht, home tie guaranteed in the next round, should win away to Newcastle, and hopefully Bundy Aki will start. Another player who is probably slightly lower down the pecking order of players, who's been quite ousted from his position at Connacht, but certainly under pressure there. Paul Quirk, maybe the best thing for someone like Carberry is to not play. If the others don't perform during the Six Nations, then he might jump straight to number 2 when it comes to the World Cup crunch decision due to experience. Reverse into the position, I think, Paul, is what you're suggesting there.
Yeah.
Kieran O'Connor, as long as Sexton, Gibson Park and Keenan are not starting every game, I'm happy. I presume that just means that...
He's not a Leinster fan there anyway.
No, I that's possible, but I presume I don't know, Kieran, you might get in touch again, but what I'm really out of that is that you want to see other players get a bit of experience in those positions.
Oh, maybe it's he's being the
as
big man
opposed to your anti-Leinster bias.
That's what I straight away
which has come to the fore there.
Yeah,
bit too quickly, Shane.
O'Connor's a good Munster name too, isn't it?
And David O'Connor says Stockdale has already proved himself to be a world-class player. We need him to step up in the Six Nations, and if he comes anywhere near the 2018 form, he will be valuable World Cup inclusion. The other thing about these squads, and it's a classic Lions conversation, you spend so much time talking about 10 players who have or haven't made the squad, who get next.
They're fringe players,
like test team, test game time, regardless.
It's
players
always
who are named in the World Cup squad, who might get injured in the intervening period or whatever it might be, and who end up don't play or get replaced or don't see any game time out there. That's the nature of the beast.
I'm fascinated. So it's 37-man Six Nations squad. I think I'm right in saying the World Cup squads have been increased from 31 to 33 from the 2019 World Cup. So you're looking at
33, yeah.
So you're looking at 4 players.
Well, it'll be 5 because Henshaw will come back into it. Say regardless, it'll be 5 of that to come out.
Be interesting to see those.
It'll be fascinating to see, because I mean, we haven't touched at all on Jamie Osborne. He's been an absolute revelation since he's come in. Like, I mean, to the point where, I know he's got a bit of versatility about him, but to the point where, like, I mean, you're picking that Leinster midfield at the minute, you're wondering, which of these who do I leave out here? Like, when they're all fit. Like, Gary Ringrose was man of the match every other game. Robbie Henshaw, as far as I'm concerned, is like in the top 3 of most important players in an Ireland team. And then you've got this guy who's been man of the match in the Hunting Cup last weekend and is absolutely shooting the lights out.
Burst onto the scene a bit like Michael Richards, this lad.
Yeah.
Jimmy Osborne, I know.
Well, I hope he doesn't follow that career path.
No. But everyone in Naas, I think, has been speaking about him for years, but he's finally come into the public national consciousness, Jimmy Osborne. And look, only uncapped player in the squad, but he could do damage. I'd love to see him make the World Cup squad, but he's going to need a couple of games in the Six Nations and a couple of big performances, you'd imagine, to make it that far.
Do please keep those comments coming in. There's plenty of them flying in. We're going to talk to Martin Lipton and just a little bit about the football last night and look ahead to the weekend as well. Emma Duggan is going to join us to look ahead to the opening weekend of the Lidl LGFA National Leagues as well, and can Meads dominance continue? There's a parallel there with Manchester City that I will clunkily wander into, I'm sure, at some point or another. But I watched the game in full last night. What a game. Watched all the analysis around it, soaked up every single bit of it as much as I could. Shane,
fair play to you. Do you want a Blue Peter badge?
Shane was at Avatar. If you missed
it, was at Avatar. Speaking of blue, continuing the theme
of the show.
I've no regrets.
I'm not asking you to regret anything.
No
I'm just pointing out facts.
Pandora is the name of the planet in Avatar. So I was in Pandora as opposed to the Etihad. So
very good.
I mean, No regrets whatsoever. You still get to come home, stick on the highlights,
stand over your position, Shane. That's absolutely fine.
Read some match reports.
It was a mad game, and I think certainly as a neutral, you're kind of willing Spurs on in a game like that. You really are, and I wasn't, as Pep Guardiola in his fascinating post-match interview, if you haven't seen it now, it was all Pep. He was just hand him the microphone and let him at it, because he was in an exceptional form, and he was spiky, and he
dosed though.
Huh?
I thought he was a bit of a dose.
Oh, I didn't think so. Well, go on.
Well, the interviewer asked the question straight up, and it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheeky. He's like, geez, what did you say at half-time? The players came out in second half and they're brilliant. He wasn't actually asking him to reveal exactly what you said at half-time. Pep just stared at him as if to say, I'm not going to tell you what I said at half-time. And the interviewer was like, well, just go with the question. I'm just asking. It's a question. He was spiky. I have no problem with managers being spiky, but you'd swear if you hadn't tuned into the game and you didn't know the result, you'd be like, oh Jesus, they must have lost 4-2.
I think there's often too much made of what did you say at half time? You must have really rose them because they came out and they were so good. I think that just does away with modern sport.
Yeah.
Right? Like there was a time where you'd go into the dressing room and you'd layer into them and tear 7 shades off them, and that'd be it. And they'd go out and they'd rip up the thing. But I think modern sport is far more about, here's the iPad, right? And you're sitting down with every player and you're saying, listen, here's where you're being got at. When you tighten up over here, you need to position it this way. When you get the ball, if you can play it in this, do you know what I mean? I think it's far more about that. I think this idea of, wow, what did you say to them at half time in modern sport is it's a thought of a dinosaur, in my view.
Too much credit given to the managers? Is that what
No, I'm not. I say the opposite. I'm saying that the manager and the coaches are in that dressing room at half time coaching.
Right. Yeah,
they're not ranting and raving at people. For me, it's not about wow, did you rip them out? I'm sure it's a very GA leaning as well, isn't it? And I'm sure it goes on plenty.
If he was ripping the Sky Sports reporter a new one at full time, you'd imagine at half time he was fairly volatile with his players at 2-0 down.
He didn't. In my view, he wasn't ripping them a new one. He was just saying. He was. Your man said to him, "What was said at half time?" And I'd say in Pep's head, he was like, "Well, I just did what I always do. We sat down with the players and we coached them. We didn't throw what we normally do out the window just because we were 2-0 down at home against Tottenham. We actually, went deeper into what we were doing." In my view, I also felt that he was really using the opportunity to hammer a message home to his players that the fire, where is the fire, the hunger, the guts. That where he was really calling them out to say that was, for me, it was the old Jose Mourinho. I'm not talking to the audience, I'm not talking to the interviewer, I'm talking to my players, and I'm saying you need to get that fire in your belly.
I don't know. He was walking towards that microphone with violence in his head. On the fire theme, it was a scorched earth policy.
Violence in his head.
He was just like, I'm going to call out the fans. I'm going to call out the players.
Yeah.
I'm going to call out complacency in the club. I'm going to call out everything here. I'm going to get it all into 4.5 minutes with Sky, and they're all going to be talking about it, and the focus will be taken off us and back to Arsenal.
Why would he want the focus taken off them? Should they blitz them in the second half?
Yeah, but he's clearly not happy with how his team are playing, and the fact that they need to go behind to win a game like that. Now, I know they took the lead against United, and so they've lost games from all sorts of positions. But even I find it bizarre that he's kind of saying, he's like, we will drop points soon again. We will drop points.
Oh, he was totally saying that, yeah. But I don't think he believes that. I think he was saying that. So he was basically.
But they don't.
He was basically doing what your man asked him to do. He was basically doing what your man asked him to do, as in revealing the conversations that he's having with his players. I'm sure if he's saying that in front of the camera, he could be damn sure that he's saying to the players in the cold light of day after that game, lads, if we do that again, we're not going to win the league. That's it. That's a powerful thing to be saying to them. I think you've lost the fire. What? Geez, imagine every one of those players afterwards, self-reflection, going, wow, what a second half we had, that was great. And you had Mahrez and Grealish coming out afterwards and saying, we didn't play that bad in the first half, we were playing okay, we were 2-0 down. And as players do, and you wouldn't expect anything different, they're not going to come out. It's okay for the manager to come out and be that honest. The players don't get that
I feel like
luxury.
He was more directing it towards the fans than the players. I almost feel like, and I'm not a parent, you could maybe explain this one to me, but when you're giving out to one of your children but you're really directing it towards the other, they can't take it.
Yeah.
And it's similar, wasn't it, the great example of Cantona in the United dressing room, that Ferguson would be tearing into some player, but he was really directing it towards Cantona.
Okay.
But he didn't want to pick out Eric Cantona because he wouldn't appreciate or like that. There's something similar. I feel like when he's calling out the players a little bit, he was really getting to the fans.
Yeah.
Like the fans at City probably have got complacent. As he said, 4 titles in 5 years. They're probably used to winning at this stage. And all of a sudden a team like Arsenal have come along with the hunger they haven't won in a couple of decades, and that's what's annoying him. He's like, you don't just win a Premier League easily. Now City might have made it look easy over the last 4, 5, 6 years, but they have to nearly have that attitude that they had in 2012, in the Aguero year.
Yeah.
Like it's impossible to fake that or falsify it, but I feel like players like Haaland coming in who haven't won a Premier League, that surely helps.
Yeah.
But he wants to win a Premier League in his first year. Like if City can win the league last year, they bring in Erling Haaland and then they don't win the league. I mean, well, first of all, what does it say about the quality of the Premier League? It says a lot. It says a lot about the quality of Arsenal this season as well. So if they were to go on and not win the Premier League with someone like Haaland in their ranks from last year,
we'll see what sort of the second half he has to the season.
Yeah, well, you called Arsenal before Christmas.
I did.
To win the league.
I mean, I'm not saying let's say I fully believe that, sure. Keane Rose says, Adrian, 100% spot on. I'm obviously reading this comment out as opposed to any of the others. World-class players can figure it out themselves and get themselves up unless you're Spurs, which is an interesting way to look at it. We're going to talk to Martin Lipton in just a few minutes about all of this. Before all of that, that's the story that you're actually interested in. There's a load of them. We've created this new slot for the stories that nobody wants to hear about. It's over to Shane.
I was waiting for my sting because
that was a fitting start to this item.
It's the best part of it. It's the best part of the item is the sting. But no, I know it's your favourite.
Around the World it's called.
Around the World.
And it's creating a slot for we couldn't find room to speak about these stories elsewhere because they're not worthwhile.
Yeah.
So here's a slot for the stories that you don't care about.
Maybe some of them are feel good. You know, you want to end your week on a high. I don't think we've ever done it on a Friday with yourself, Adrian. We were
first time.
This week we decided,
long time listener, first time caller.
Yeah, do you know who'd love this slot? Adrian Barry. Let's do it with him. He'll not be sarcastic about it. He'll not give out about it. He'll just enjoy it.
I'll be on board. I'm a team player.
Yeah, team player. The first story, Adrian, will take us all the way to California, United States of America, the West Coast. There's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist called Chloe Kim. A lot of people will be familiar with her. Some won't. But she's very, very, very talented. She's 22, youngest woman to win an Olympic snowboarding gold medal in the women's snowboard halfpipe. She was just 17 when she did that at the 2018 Winter Olympics. She went on to repeat the trick then. But she is quite extraordinary. We've got a video clip that we'll bring you in just a second. So she gave a piggyback down a mountain. You'll see it on the screen here. We can talk over it. To a fellow snowboarder. This was at Mammoth Mountain in California. Bit of blizzard conditions, as you can see. She's holding the snowboarder's hands while they go down together. She had fallen, this snowboarder. Kim then teaches her how to roll over to get back up. She's like, all right, this is easy, light work. Windy conditions. And extremely, extremely hazardous, it has to be said. Mammoth Mountain in California, typical of the conditions that you would find there. A beginner snowboarder.
Mammoth Mountain.
Mammoth
is that
Mountain.
what it's called?
It is. Yeah. So you can imagine it's fairly big.
It's big, all right.
Hence the name. There was actually a Mammoth Mountain in Colorado. We were climbing Mount Elbert in Colorado last summer. Tallest mountain in the Rockies. Just not bragging there, but throw that in there.
I knew there was a point to this story because it sure wasn't the actual story.
Well, there you can see in the video, she puts her on her back. And there's obviously someone recording, which would lead you to believe it. You could be cynical and say, well, they're here and recording this. But she's very, very skillful. She gets to the bottom and the woman is like, thank you. And the guy's like, do you have any idea who that is? She's like, nope, not a clue. That's 2-time Olympic champion Chloe Kim. And she decides to get a photograph with her. And apparently it's not the first time that Chloe Kim has helped someone in need. There was people in the comments saying, someone said, Chloe helped my nephew out of a tree years ago. We still talk about it. She's the best.
It's just going to be a trend now of people going, that time I slipped and fell. Chloe Kim was there to help me out.
So it appears to be, it's like, Forrest Gump is everywhere. Like it appears Chloe Kim, when someone is in trouble on a mountain, Chloe Kim just appears.
Well, that is one story I don't care about. So what else have we got?
Guys, I just wanted a feel-good story this week. We talked about it in a production meeting earlier this week. Did that not make you feel good, Adrian? You're so cynical.
Not especially.
Okay, we'll move on from California to Poznan, Poland. Marcin Oleksy is the name of this player. He's an amputee football player who's had a goal nominated for the Puskás Award, FIFA's award, of course, for the best goals across the previous calendar year. You have other nominees this year, including Mbappe, Mario Balotelli makes an appearance. Richarlison for his goal for Brazil in the World Cup as well is in there. The current holder of the Puskas Award is Eric Lamela. You'll remember his sensational Rabona for Spurs against Arsenal in the 2020-21 season. And look, Premier League stars have actually dominated this award. We remember Stephanie Roach getting nominated famously, and the famous photos of her with Ronaldo and Messi at the award ceremony. But Son Heung-min, Mo Salah and Olivier Giroud have all won it while playing in England in recent years. But this goal that was nominated, Marcin Alexi, so he represented Poland at the 2022 Amputee World Cup, helping them reach the round of 16. They were edged out 2-1 by Brazil. But the goal that we're about to see on screen, we can probably pop it up on screen. This was in an amputee game for Poland, surrounded by his Warta Poznan teammates. The ball's crossed in. It's an unbelievable finish. It has to be said.
That's the first time I've seen that. That is tasty.
I mean, so the guy has one leg, and he's able to do that, flick his body basically up and above itself. I was looking up the rules then of the Irish Amputee Football Association is also set up. Was set up in April 2011. It was first played competitively in America in the 1980s, amputee football, and I know that it's going from strength to strength in Ireland. There's a couple of lads, even Paul Smith from back home in Monaghan, involved with the FAI, and they're really, really taking this on as a serious thing in Ireland, are doing quite well. So an amputee is defined as someone who is abbreviated at or near the ankle or wrist. So the rules involved in the game: outfield players can have 2 hands but only 1 leg. Goalkeepers may have 2 feet but only 1 hand, and you have those metal crutches that you'll see in the clip that we just played as well. And use of a crutch, naturally enough, against a player is completely frowned upon, leads to ejection for the game, penalty kick for the opposing team. It's a slightly smaller pitch, of course, than a full-size football pitch, 70 by 60 metres. The ball is FIFA standard, no offside rule as well, and the goalkeeper can't leave their area. But I just think it's a sport that probably doesn't get the credit or recognition it deserves. I know the FAI are trying to do a lot of things to kind of bring it in, and blind football is another one that's really going from strength to strength in Ireland as well. So a lot of football associations in the 80s got ahead of this and started to, I guess, make amputee football a bigger thing and get into it. As I said, it started off in America kind of in the 80s, but Ireland are really getting involved now, and they're one of the countries that are really doing good things. I'm
gonna sit in judgment here, and I'm gonna say you're 1 from 2 so far.
1 from 2. Okay.
Wow was here, Shane. What have you got?
So Chloe Kim. Sorry if you're watching, Chloe, but Adrian, not impressed.
Doing it for
Let's hope you don't get. Have you ever been skiing?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Well, geez, I hope you don't get stuck up there or caught in a blizzard or need help from Chloe Kim.
Come on, keep it rolling with the stories we don't care about here, Shane.
Right,
what have we got?
We're going to Salerno, Italy now.
Yeah,
Adrian, because Salernitana, Serie A team, have gone back to their ex, which is something you should never do. 48 hours after getting the sack, Davide Nicola brought in from the cold. There he is, screaming after being sacked. Probably. Lovely hair, a bit of a Davigina look about Davide Nicola. Essentially, Salernitana lost 8-2 to Atalanta in Bergamo last Sunday, which led to the initial call. Atalanta putting 8 goals past them. So that was the first time in a Serie A game that had happened for more than 26 years. So a bit of an outlier. They're winless in 6, 4 defeats, outscored 18-7 during that stretch as well. They're 16th in the Serie A table, Salernitana, 9 points above the drop zone, so it's not all lost. They have league leaders Napoli up next tomorrow before they take on informed Lecce, who have not lost in 6 games. So they sacked Davide Nicola, and then on Wednesday they announced he was back in his old management position. So he received a call from the president of the club. They had apparently been in conversations with Rafa Benitez to take this job. He obviously turned it down, and then the president's like, Jesus, do you know what? We'll go back to the old guy. Literally 2 days later. So the president explained. He says the president explained to me the reasons for his painful decision, which he had taken to highly discontinuity after a bad defeat. I apologised, took responsibility for the performance, but he basically was saying, look, I know this club, I know what the team needs to do to get back to where it needs to be. I have the passion, I have the desire, and I thank the president, I thank the director Morgan De Sanctis for his mediation. Without him, this would not be possible. Let's start again. It's such a lovely story, Adrian. Someone being given a second chance. Now this could go south. If he starts losing games again, as I said, it's Napoli and Lecce up next for him. So leaders, in form Lecce. In a real terrible way, I'd love to see him get sacked again. It sounds awful.
It's basically like it's a non-story. It's basically like a quicker Big Sam. That's all. Quicker Big Sam. Colin McCarthy's been in touch to say we had 14 show up for a Junior C Camogie game, and Chloe Kim stood in a quarter forward.
See, she helps out in all sorts of emergencies.
If anybody else has been helped by Chloe Kim, please get in contact.
Has anyone met Chloe Kim? Let us know.
You're 1 from 3 so far, Shane.
That's grand. I don't care. We'll move on to the last story. We're going, Adrian, to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Usain Bolt I mean, the music probably isn't what Usain Bolt wants to hear. There he is on screen. A lawyer for Usain Bolt saying this week that more than $12.7 million is missing from his account with a private investment firm in his homeland of Jamaica. Linton P. Gordon is the lawyer for Bolt. He's provided the Associated Press with a copy of a letter demanding that the money be returned. So the account once had $12.8 million in it, this account of Usain Bolt's, but now has $12,000 in the account. So it's a serious act, they're saying, of fraud, larceny, or a combination of a number of things against our client. They've threatened civil and criminal action if the money isn't returned within 10 days. So the countdown clock has started. If you're watching this, you've stolen Usain Bolt's money, he wants it back within 10 days. Bit of a Liam Neeson vibe going on here. I will find you and I will...
Is that all his money, do we know?
I'm sure Usain
Bolt. The other accounts?
He has to have more than 12 million, doesn't he? Usain Bolt?
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but I mean, relatively speaking, fastest guy in the world, one of the most famous athletes there has ever been. Yeah, he's got to have more money than that. Unless he's absolutely been financially foolish and wasted it all on different things. I don't know. But of course, it seems to be an element of fraud within the bank. Generally speaking, he's saying we understand clients are anxious to receive more information. Closely monitoring the situation, the company has said it discovered the fraud earlier this month and that several of its clients may be missing millions of dollars.
His net worth is estimated... Sorry, Shane.
Yeah, his net worth.
Estimated to be $90 million.
Okay.
So he does have his money elsewhere.
He's 78 million odd else.
Not going to make or break him.
Now, he's put up a bit of a cryptic Instagram post. You'll see on the screen now in a second here. And I can't read the bottom of it, and I've made the mistake of making it too small. But
well, this is very reflective of this item.
He's mentioned the word cryptic, and he's put a black screen on his Instagram post, and he's referenced money as well. So it's a worrying one.
I was with you there until the end and you lost it.
In a world of lies, where is the truth? The history of evil, what is the root? Money. # cryptic world. That's what he said in that post. So look, I guess the point of this morning is if you have Usain Bolt's money, if you have his $12.8 million and you happen to be watching OTB AM this morning, give it back to him. So Adrian Barry, I'm delighted to have brought you along on my around the world journey. You might say one out of four.
I would say 1 out of... I was going to give you a 2 there, but the fact that you couldn't read your own thing at the end...
Do you know what?
That's counted against you, I'm afraid.
As long as someone took something from this morning, maybe a feel-good factor, 4 little stories that you may have missed. So now, if you're sitting around the pub with your friends or around the gaff with your family this weekend, and someone brings up this story, you can say, "I've heard about this. Shane talked about this on Around the World on Friday." So thank you, Shane. Equally so, if you didn't like it, a bit like Adrian, I really don't care. We've done this a lot on a Friday, and Adrian's not
impressed. Stories that you haven't heard from elsewhere, and there was no need for you to hear them, but that was it. It was Around the World with Shane. Please don't do that on a Friday again.
I think we should do it on a Friday every week now, just because of Adrian's reaction. You've made it more interesting.
Let's talk about some real sport. Some YouTube commenters saying that I'm really miserable.
You are fairly miserable, yeah, for a Friday. Jesus.
Let's talk about some actual sport. Martin Lipton, football writer. Good morning to you.
Hello. How are we?
Flying it, and really enjoyed the game last night. I wasn't sure at the end of it though, particularly after the Pep interview, what the true story about Manchester City as of January 2023 is. What's your view on it?
I don't think anyone knows, actually. And I think that's the issue. I thought I'd be coming here to talk about how desperate Spurs were, and I think we'll get onto that later.
We will.
Clearly, there's issues with City internally. I think you look at it and you think that he's never liked any sort of adverse fan reaction. He's shown that in the past. But I think he thinks that 1 or 2 of his players are not putting the effort in. And remember that his training method is full on every session. He wants them to buy into his particularly demanding ways. And I think he's looking across that squad and seeing players who don't want to do so. And I think this is the first time since he's been at City that he's had that. Now, he had that towards the end of his period at Bayern Munich, and he shows similar signs of agitation then.
It's also possible, it struck me during that piece, that he is rarely as giving, let's call it, and as emotional almost as he was in that piece. Is he overstating his case to a degree just to try and get a reaction from the players, or do you think he actually believes, because I mean some of the stuff here, if people have missed it, if we don't show more guts we're going to get caught sooner or later, I don't recognise my team, and Arsenal have the fire, they have the fire. Was he overstating his case?
it looks as though it's an effort to get some sort of reaction, certainly to spark something from them. Maybe it's to try and get reaction from the board to give them some more money and buy a couple of players in the last 10 days of the window. I mean, that's always possible. You look at City and you still think they're a fine team, but they aren't as convincing as they have been. And I think that is because they have had to change their way of playing to accommodate Haaland, and he will always score a goal because he's clearly an outstanding goal scorer, an outstanding striker. But it does mean they're playing with 10. And part of the genius of Pep was that he overwhelmed his opponents with ball possession. And you need 11 to do that.
And he's never going to be that guy. What does and on that, because it does strike me that so much commentary this morning is going to be about the interview and less so about the shoddiness of the Ederson pass that led to the first goal, or how get-atable they were through the middle in the lead into the second goal. That possibly those things are real tangible portents to how this title is going to play out.
Well, the critical games are those two against Arsenal. Now, one of them is relatively swiftly, the other one's not till April. But City have got to win the first of those to keep the pressure on. They are in the rare position of wanting Manchester United to win at the weekend as well, which I'm sure will be an irony not lost on them. There's no question Arsenal have been the best team in the league this year by as many points as the table tells you. They've been excellent. They've only lost the one game, and they shouldn't have lost that. If they'd kept their heads, they'd have probably beaten United at Old Trafford. So City are in a genuine fight. It's not an unwinnable fight as the one they left themselves with against Liverpool 3 seasons ago. And they know that they've hauled teams back in the past. But they will need half the season where they drop maybe 6 points, including 2 games against Arsenal. Well, that's a big call, particularly when you've got Champions League, which, as we know, is the prime target of the club. And at the moment, I think that not just the bookies, but I think that anyone would look at it and think, actually, this is Arsenal's title to lose. So for City to overcome that, they've really got to shape up. And I think they showed a laxity in the first half in particular. And against a less flaky team than Spurs, they'd have lost that match.
You're on with us every second or third week, Martin, and we ask you this question every time you're on, I'm pretty sure. And it seemed unthinkable that we'd be asking this question this morning at half-time in the game last night. But the future of Antonio Conte seems like a reasonable question to ask this morning.
I can't see any way in that he's at the club next season.
Right.
At the moment. For a variety of reasons. And I think actually, and I had not thought of this before, but he gave a real indication of the primary reason in his press conference before the game. And it's nothing to do with his relationship with the board or the players or transfers or any of that. I think he fears that he's getting old. He's had a number of close friends and family die. And he's reassessing his life and asking himself, do I really want to be away from home any longer? And I think the answer is no.
As in,
it's as simple as that. It's a perfectly normal, natural human reaction.
For legitimate reasons, he's almost sort of checked out a bit.
I don't think he wants to leave now. But he's a professional and he has a job to do and he'll see it through. But I don't think his heart's in it at the moment because he feels he's let people down by being away almost, and he wants to go home and he wants to go back to Italy and he wants to see his family and his kids and his extended family, and he can't do that if he's in London.
It is those I mean, Luca Vialli, I suppose, is the most recent of them, Martin, that you mentioned, and Gianpiero Ventroni, the fitness coach, and Mihailovic as well, who he got on with very well over the years. They must have all just triggered something in Conte's mind, and you can kind of sense it, as you say, from his interviews, that he certainly is thinking about life beyond football.
That doesn't mean he's going to retire. I don't think he will. I think it's too much in him to go to walk away from the game. But he could go back to Juventus or Inter or Milan or Napoli, or obviously not Napoli the way they're going. He could go back to Italy and get a job like that and still be at home, still be close to people. And I think it's, as you get older, sadly I know this as I'm getting older, you do start to think about your own mortality a bit more. When you're a kid, you're never going to die. When you get older, you know you're going to die. And the question is when you're going to die, and you start to wonder, what have I done with my life? And you start to reassess yourself and your relationships with people, particularly family. And unfortunately, this year has brought... I might be entirely wrong. This is completely my reading of watching from remote press conferences, so I might be entirely wrong, but I read it. I just get the sense of this is a human reaction, and he thinks he has to leave.
Is this season and the way it's playing out most especially galling for Tottenham fans, given that the fact that they've finished ahead of Arsenal, mostly, particularly recently, not by much, for each of the last 6 seasons, and the gap is now a chasm at the top for Arsenal. Is that another factor for Tottenham fans' frustration at the minute with a Conte or with the board or whoever else?
I think it's heightened all of the frustration and disappointment. They look at the table. If Spurs had been 5th with Arsenal 4th and 4 points ahead, it wouldn't have felt so bad. It would have felt bad. It wouldn't have felt so bad. The fact that Arsenal are 14 points clear and going to probably end up being 30 points clear of Spurs, the way it's going, doesn't help. Spurs are going to be playing, if they're lucky, and I'm not sure they will at the moment, if they're lucky, they'll be playing Europa League or Conference League next season, unless something remarkable happened over the next 4 months, which I really can't see. And it feels like the club's in free fall. I don't think it actually is in free fall. It just feels like it. The basics of the club, the economics of the club, are solid and sound. And if you're going to ask me next, and I'm sure you will, and the answer is Mauricio Pochettino returning in the summer. I think it's almost, if Conte goes, Pochettino will be invited back in.
I presume that whoever that is, the first question is, how much money have I got to replace my goalkeeper and most of the defence?
Well, they've got the money. They've got a lot of money. The question is whether they want to spend it or not. Their revenues this season will be, I think, somewhere in the region of £500 million, which allows them to spend 450 million if they wanted to on players and wages and meet the UEFA criteria. They haven't lost a huge amount of money. They're in a position where they can certainly spend. Is there a willingness to do so? If you are looking to sell the club and maximise its value, which I think is clearly what the leadership, the ownership at some point want to do, you have to be able to offer Champions League football. The way you offer Champions League football is to have Champions League players. Spurs have still got the 6th highest wage bill. They've got to try and make that nearer the 5th highest wage bill to give themselves a realistic long-term, time and time again chance. And, of course, there's going to be a 7th contender for those places, who already is a 7th contender for those places in Newcastle. So it's going to get harder, not easier.
Will Pochettino want to come back, Martin, do you think?
Yes. Unfinished business. I think at the time I took the view that they would have been better just giving him a sabbatical and say come back in August rather than sacking him. The relationship between Pochettino and Levy was very, very strong. You've got to remember that. They used to go on holiday together, whitewater rafting, things like that. They were together for a long time. They disagreed on things, but a lot of it was about the finances of the new stadium, that Levy felt he couldn't give all the money Pochettino wanted. In fact, one famous summer, none of the money that Pochettino wanted because of the rebuild cost. That's no longer an issue. But also, Pochettino bought into it to a degree. What he wanted to do was get rid of some players to allow him to spend the money from their sales. That included, at the time, Alderweireld and others, and they couldn't find a buyer. So he wasn't completely opposed to the policy. He just felt that it needed to be better worked out. On a personal level, I think there's still a pretty strong relationship. I don't think there's any hint of animosity. And if he's got unfinished business, Levy will think, also, it's a manager I know I can deal with.
Will there be an overhaul of the squad if Pochettino was to? You look even last night at the performance and performances recently. Heung-min Son is a man who's bang out of form. Ivan Perisic last night given a torrid time by Riyad Mahrez. There's players all over the pitch that look, they're individually speaking not playing well, which you can't really give Conte the blame for all of it.
Yeah, I mean, but at half-time you wouldn't have said that, would you?
No, fair point.
You might say it about Son, but you wouldn't have. You said, "Oh, Bentancur's made such a difference, and Kulusevski being back, and look, Spurs, they're all right. They've got Kane. Look at that, and even Emerson Royal. You know." And then you see the second half, think this is an absolute shower of rubbish. What the hell are they doing on the pitch? Football can be a bit like that. Look, I think it's no doubt Son's having a terrible season. Awful. I mean, he's a shadow of the player he was for whatever reason, and he could really do is spend the next month playing 15 minutes here and there off the bench and try and galvanise him that way. To be fair to Perisic, he's been one of the better performers this season. He had a poor game yesterday in the second half, but that's because he wasn't given any cover. There are lots of others who I get rid of before Perisic. I mean, Spurs haven't got really, apart from Romero, a proper defender at the back and the centre half. The right wing back's not good enough. None of them, unfortunately. Let's be honest. I mean, even Doherty's had an improvement. He's not an international class, world class, which is what Tottenham want or need. Right wing back. They haven't got a playmaker in the squad. Yeah, it needs to be overhauled. Too many of those players were there in the first few, certainly still there when Pochettino left. Quite a few of them were there virtually when he started, and that's ludicrous.
Talk to us a little bit about Arsenal United, Martin, if you will, before we wrap up. It's brilliant, I feel, to have this rivalry back to the point where they're both at the peak of their game. Both, I mean, you could extend the courtesy to United challenging for the title.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Casemiro absence could be critical because he's been a pivotal part of United in recent weeks, and the frustration of conceding that goal against Palace, it will work either way. It'll either galvanise them, really make them up to get the win, or it will be just a bit too far. Arsenal are flying, and they are an outstanding side at the moment. Saka, Odegaard, excellent. And Nketiah's movement, if not his goals, and again, Gabriel Jesus didn't score goals, so it is his movement, has made up for the loss of Gabriel Jesus. They've been incredibly fortunate. Every game 10 players play. If they stay fit, if they keep that fitness up, they win the league. But can they do that? That's the big question. But on the weekend, United need to win. A draw is just about acceptable for Arsenal, but Arsenal want to win. And I think that at the moment, you put Arsenal as pretty 60-40 favourites to do so.
You're right about Casemiro. It's such a shame he's not there, because I think it would have been a far different game and a tighter game, and if Arsenal win, everybody will point to that. They've eventually made a signing, Martin. It's not quite the man they set out to get, but Leandro Trossard joins, fees of around 26 million, rising to that at some point or another. Is this a squad bolstering, or is there room for this guy in the first 11?
I think when they played Chelsea and beat them, I said they needed to make a few changes in January. I think they needed a striker, they needed a right side option, because if they got an injury on the left, Saka could switch, but someone who could at least give them that option up front, and they could have just done with a central midfielder in case Partey gets injured. So this is one of those three. Trossard is good enough to start, no question. Whether he will start is another issue. I'm not sure he will be in the first 11, but there'll be games when he starts. He's already proven this season, over a number of seasons actually, for Brighton and for Belgium, that he's a quality act. It's a very good signing, and it improves them in terms of their depth straight away. They'll be delighted with that, and rightly so.
I think there'll be no issues in terms of the atmosphere on Sunday at the Emirates, Martin, for sure. Like, not to take it back to Pep's comments, but when he's talking about fans and fans getting involved in club games, I saw a number of City fans last night on Twitter kind of pointing to ticket prices and how, for many people they can fly to Germany and go to a game for the same price as walk across the road in London to a Premier League match. Is that an issue for a number of clubs at the moment, that atmospheres are being kind of dictated by the sheer size of the ticket prices at the moment?
I think the demographics of football have altered. We're not talking about the working man's ballet anymore, are we? It is no longer something that you can you can't turn up if you want to like I change your mind and go to watch a Premier League game. You've got to buy your tickets in advance, and you've got to pay upwards of 50-60 quid. In London prices are, I live in London, so I'm used to them, but for most places in the country, London ticket prices are inconceivably astronomical. And even City have always been relatively cheap compared to a number of clubs. It feels expensive. We're in a cost of living crisis. People are going to pick and choose their games. They can't afford season tickets, a lot of people, in the way that once upon a time they could have done. And therefore it does mean more tourists, if you want to call them that, who just want to have the atmosphere of the ground for one game because of the Premier League's global appeal, are going to be inside because they can afford it. It's part of their holiday. Their trip is to go to a Premier League game, and they don't really care who wins. That's just the nature of the success of the Premier League can be in some regards a failing. So I think there is some merit in the argument, but there's also a lot of City fans who booed because they were just hacked off at the way they play, because they could see the title slipping away, and some of them thought Guardiola's comments on Saturday after the Manchester derby were in basically throwing in the towel in the Premier League.
This last one is not a topic to touch on briefly, but if you can, and we'll come back to it again in more deep conversation, I'm sure, down the track. But I listened to the Jim White interview in TalkSport with John Yems yesterday afternoon with my jaw on the ground, I must say. Former Crawley manager, banned from football until 2024 after being guilty of racist abuse. It's incredible how this has played out. It has felt to me like a conversation that should never have been in the first place, but certainly of decades old.
It's horrific to realise that despite the meteor that struck the planet 70 odd million years ago, dinosaurs still walk amongst us. And Yems's cultural attitudes, his, let's be honest, racism, no question about it, whatever the panel said, has no place in society, let alone within football. I'm not sure of the wisdom of giving him a platform yesterday, but in the end, what it served to do was prove everything the FA is saying, that they want this decision to be reassessed, to be toughened and strengthened and added to, because it is clearly insufficient. They don't believe that this is Wembley, don't believe that they can formally demand the changes of the wording of the reading, because it was the ruling, because it's an independent panel, including a QC, including Tony O'Gara, the former Sheffield United striker. But the only thing I can say that's a positive is that I cannot see any way in which John Yems is ever appointed or given a post by a football club ever again. And that's a good thing. Other than that, it's been a pretty depressing, reprehensible few days.
Listen to that interview. I'm not sure that he fully agrees. Remarkably, Curtis Fleming was incredibly giving and good on the topic as well. You can check that out on our YouTube channel. Martin Lipton, The Sun, thanks a million.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Interesting as always. It's got 9:15 on this Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day for you. 10:30 will be the football kickoff, marking your card ahead of all that good Premier League stuff ahead of the weekend. Joe in conversation with Ruby Walsh and OTB Gold at 1. Cork, the subject of Mount Rushmore at 3. Keith Wood's State of the Union from 4. And then at 6, it's OTB Gold and it's an Irish football special. Shay Given, Niall Quinn, Jason McAteer and Kevin Gilban. What is not to love with that? And then Off the Ball live on your radio from 7 this evening. You can follow us as well across all of our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for the best and the latest in sports content. After the break, we're going to be talking with Meads' Emma Duggan about the return of the Lidl National Football League and plenty more as well. Besides, first of all of that, during the ad break, you're going to hear from Alan Quinlan, narrowly avoiding being bottom of the OTB Games Room, despite producer Kathleen having a better, in inverted commas, and I'm just reading what it says in front of me on the script here, having a better overall, that's made up, a better overall performance. The OTB Games Room, in partnership with Virgin Media, bring your A game with 99.9% broadband reliability. First of all, your daily GMAC motivation.
Testing 1 2 1 2 GMAC 1 2. GMAC's morning motivational moment, or something along those lines. There's so many to choose from. Good morning, Graham McDowell here, GMAC as you guys like to call me. Some Friday motivation for you now ahead of the weekend. Age is no barrier in sport. It's a limitation you put on your mind. I'm a big sports fan. I love all sports, mainly football. British football, soccer as you guys like to call it. That's your Friday motivation. See you on Monday. GMAC's morning motivational moment, or something along those lines. There's so many to choose from.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
What position are you playing, Sarah?
I'm playing in Katie McCabe's position, so tell her to watch out. And I'm only joking.
All joking aside, is it even part of your dream?
That's like saying, if you had an opportunity to go to the Olympics, would you not go? Of course you'd go. Of course you'd love to go. Of course it would be your dream. Any sports person's dream would be to play at the highest level of any sport that they can get to.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Matty was keeping it. Except now. Oh, off the post!
You should be ashamed of yourself. Only beating me 1-0.
Yeah, but it was total domination. And Darwin Núñez was clear through, I won't lie, I was panicking a bit.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh yeah. Finish it! Finish it! Oh, God damn it! Let's get this. Win the header. That's going to be it. Ref's going to blow it up. Don't blow it up, ref. Damn it! 1-0.
You got the win. Total domination, but...
You're not bottom of the table.
Wow. That's an achievement, isn't it?
Kathleen McNamee remains bottom of the table because you got your first shot on target earlier in the game than Kathleen did.
Wow.
Which is a damning reflection.
The Rovers fans are happy.
But I won't lie, Kathleen's overall performance, I would say, was much better.
Well done.
Are you going to bring in the young lad to take your place?
Yeah, I think he'd be better.
You might bring him in for the rugby analysis as well, would you?
Yeah, I will.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 20 minutes past 9 on this Friday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to welcome to the show this morning the Dunboyne and Meath star, Emma Duggan. Morning, Emma. How are things?
Good, how are you?
Keeping well. Thanks for joining us, Emma, as always. You have the Lidl Ladies National Football League against the Dubs tomorrow. A bit of a resumption of a rivalry, it's fair to say, that's juiced up and built up over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been, I suppose, only a couple of years now with the rivalry. When we were intermediate, we probably weren't on their radar at all. But I suppose since 2021, we are, and it's great, to be playing against the best teams. And no better way, I suppose, to kickstart the league as well. Than against Dublin. I think we'll quickly find out where we are. So we're all really looking forward to it.
I know you're studying accounting and finance in DCU, so you'll know that St Clair's pitch over there fairly well, it's safe to say. It was a bit of controversy during the week, the fact that this game can't be played in Parnell Park. I guess it's had a lot of action, Parnell Park, in recent weeks and months, so just not ready for use. But is there any disappointment that maybe there won't be as big a crowd as there could be for a game like this? Because there's a lot of interest when Dublin play Meath, but I guess there's no main stand, which is the issue that a lot of people are pointing out.
Yeah, I think, if you look back at the game last year in Partalton in Navan, the atmosphere was absolutely unbelievable. I think we all probably just presumed that it was going to be in Parnell Park, but look, these things happen, and both teams have to play on the same pitch. There probably won't be the same atmosphere, but I'm sure there'll be a big crowd out regardless. Everyone wants to see a Meath and Dublin game. But yeah, look, I think it's disappointing, but we're not getting too bogged down about it either. We've to play the game, and at the end of the day, we still have to get a result. So
they could have just run it up the road to back up to Navan.
Exactly, we would have taken it in Navan, all right.
It wouldn't have been. And I'm sort of half joking saying that, but it's a ground that I don't know what the fixture schedule of Park Talton over the weekend was, but more fitting of a game like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, for a game like this, like you said, there's always going to be a big crowd there, and everyone wants to go to see that game. So I think it's probably one of them games where it does need a stand, and it does need a bigger venue than what DCU are able to produce. But that it is what it is. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about it now. Of course, if we had to say, we'd happily play it in Navan, but that's not how the league works either. It's a home fixture for them, so. They get to choose what pitch it's on, and I'm sure they probably struggle to find a pitch as well. It seems to be a bit of a problem at this time of year. But look, like I said, we have to play the game, and we have to try to go out and get a performance regardless of where the match is.
I understand you had a bit of an extended individual break before Christmas, Emma, and then team holiday to Gran Canaria over New Year's. I'm sure that was a nice little bonding session to get away.
Yeah, bonding, all right, you could say. Yeah, look, it was great to get away with the girls, I suppose. We probably hadn't seen each other as a group in a good few weeks with the club, and then everyone's doing their own thing individually. So it was great to get together. And with the two girls back from Australia as well, Vicky and Orla joined us as well. So it was really great, and I think we enjoyed ourselves for the last hurrah. So we knew it was going to be back to business when we came home. So we let loose.
You mentioned Vicky and Orla there. To have them involved this year is huge for yourselves. I know you have a couple of girls travelling as well, which is a disappointment. But someone like Vicky Wall's level especially, and you were seeing the rumours during the week that she was being tapped up by the IRFU to come involved and play a bit of rugby. But you're not having that at all, Emma, are you?
To be honest with you, I was actually shocked when I saw it. I was like, I have no idea where this has come from. And to be honest with you, she hasn't said anything to me about it, so I'd be very disappointed if she was keeping secrets like that from me. So no, I don't think, you can confirm with Vicky, but I'm pretty sure there's no truth to that. I'm not really sure where it came from. But look, these things happen. That's the media for you. They get a hint of something and they make it a thing. But look, I'm sure she's sick of people coming up and asking her now the last 2 days. I think she was as surprised as the rest of us to see that out there. But I know, look, we're delighted that she's sticking with Gaelic and not rugby for the season ahead. I think we're going to need her for championship. So it's
probably testament to how well you have done over the last couple of years, because when a team's doing well, everyone wants to be involved. The number of people going off travelling or wanting to go down and play in Australia probably dwindles when a team is winning All Irelands, because they don't want to look back in 3, 4, 5 years or at the end of their career and say, Jesus, I left a few All Irelands there, I could have been involved.
Yeah, exactly. I think that made, the decision for the girls going off travelling a lot harder when you're, in this phase of winning. You don't really want to leave it. And, we know all too well that, good times don't last forever, unfortunately, and we have to, really, take advantage at this time when we're winning and try to progress even further. So it's great that I suppose Vicky and Orla can see that as well. I never had a doubt in my mind whether they were going to play or not. I think they're extremely passionate football and Meath people. So any chance they're going to get to an All Ireland medal, they're going to take it. So we're just delighted to have them on board.
I remember hearing you speaking before, Emma, in the last year or two about physicality in the women's game. You made the very good point, that it could and should be brought in line with the men's game, that you can get away with nothing in the women's side of things at the moment. And as you said, you're going to the gym 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. What's the point if you can't adopt that physicality into the sport? Do you think that's a factor in terms of players wanting to go down to Australia, and even the Australian clubs realising, we could get these girls involved because the physicality down here is far greater and far more things are allowed? So is that an element of the game you'd like to see changed in ladies football?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a small tweak that can be made. I don't think it'll ever be in line with the men's game. They're just obviously a different build completely. And I'm not saying that to be in any way, I suppose, patronising or condescending to women. Like, it's just it's how it is. But we are getting, very, we are strong. We spend a lot of time in the gym these days. So it, like I said, it kind of makes no sense to me as to why we're putting more emphasis on the gym and strength and conditioning if it can't be, I suppose, used in games the way, we might like it. So I think, there could be a little change made there. Maybe it's kind of just an interpretation issue from referees or whatever. But it's definitely something I'd like to see progress over the next couple of years. But, I'm not sure how we'll get that. But, it's definitely something I'd like to see kind of change in the game, all right.
It would certainly keep players involved, no doubt. Like, is that the main element of the game you'd like to see changed over the next couple of years? Are there other rules that kind of, when you come back to pre-season training, you're like, Jesus, yeah, I forgot about this. There are, I'm sure, elements of the game, and it's the same in the men's side of things, that frustrate the players.
Yeah, I think obviously physicality-wise, definitely frustrates players. I think there's probably one rule in particular in the ladies' game that no one really understands. It's the charging rule. So to be honest with you, I actually couldn't, people ask me all the time, what is the rule to that? And I couldn't tell them anymore, because unfortunately it's different for every referee and how they interpret it, which is obviously, not great if there's such an inconsistent way in which the game is played. Sometimes you could run into someone and a foul is given against you, or another day you could run into someone and, you're given the free. So it's really, really hard to know. I know it's something that the LGFA are trying to work on. I know it was a question that I answered in a survey for the GPA not too long ago about the charging rule. So it's obviously been made clear to them that it's inconsistent. But look, hopefully it'll improve in the next year, because it's quite hard to judge every game, to be honest with you. And I think that brings a lot of frustration to players and obviously management on the sideline as well.
Davy Nelson is involved this year, Emma, so and fresh face, new ideas coming into the team as well, which adds a little bit of interest to the squad as well, because everyone is starting from new. Or not, it's an opportunity for players who maybe were fringe players to get into the starting 15 across the next number of months in league and championship. So far so good with Davy?
Yeah, so far so good. He's very different to what we've had before. But different isn't always bad. He's brought a really good side, and himself and Bernie are just bringing something a little bit different in terms of, you know, their personality, their perspective, the way they look at things, and obviously fresh and new ideas. So it's really great to have them in. And like you said, it's an opportunity for girls who maybe haven't got much game time or have been on the fringes for the last years to kind of put their hand up. But yeah, look, we still have a bit of continuity there with Mark Brennan's still involved. So it's not like the two, you know, Davey and Bernie are coming in and changing everything up. You know, they're just looking at things a little bit different and trying to tweak our game as much as we can, which is exactly what we need. You know, we constantly need to improve if we want to stay at the top. So it's great to have them in, and obviously we look forward to the year ahead with them, and hopefully it brings a little bit more success.
I was listening to a podcast with David Moyes during the week, Emma, and he was talking about that sort of aftermath, obviously coming in after Alex Ferguson and not wanting to come in and turn everything upside down. So to try and harness some of the stuff that was there, add his own little bit, it sort of sounds a little bit like that's what's going on with Davey. What sort of stuff has he been looking to change on a practical level, or what are you doing differently?
Yeah, look, like you said, he's definitely not going to try change and bring in a whole new game plan, a whole new system, anything like that. You know, I think that takes years to develop, and obviously we want to take full advantage of where we're at the minute. You know, I think he's kind of taken the approach of, you know, don't fix what's not broken kind of thing. So yeah, there is definitely elements. I think in years we probably haven't been a great kick passing team, or just little things like that he's probably trying to introduce a little bit more of. But yeah, look, he's definitely not trying to change a whole lot. I think he's just trying to maybe utilise the players he has a little bit more in different ways, and, you know, trying girls out in new positions, stuff like this. So it'll be interesting to see now where we can go.
Does he sit with you during that process, or when he comes in to say, listen, here's what I'm about, here's what you've been doing? Is there stuff that you're sitting on that you want to talk about, that you want to do, that you'd like to do differently? Does he consult with maybe even some of the more senior players on that, or just sort of bash away on his own?
Yeah, he definitely would. He's a great communicator. He takes on, you know, everyone's opinion on board, and I think that's really important to have. Obviously, we have a lot of, you know, experienced older girls on the team. They've been around for a long time. They know what we're about. They know what we, you know, our potential and stuff like that. So he definitely listens to everyone. You know, he's not stubborn. You know, he doesn't have, you know, his way or no way. He definitely likes players' opinions, and he's definitely taken them on board so far. So, you know, hats off to him for that. He's not trying to come in and you know, put a weird dynamic into the team either. So you know, he's been great so far. I can have absolutely no complaints about him.
Just the last one for me, Emma. I know after that first All Ireland in 2020 that you were keen to point out to people that it wasn't a fluke, it wasn't a flash in the pan. You know, it was a thing that had been building for a number of years, and you did that by backing it up and winning another All Ireland. So you'll have a target on your backs now. It strikes me, and I remember it was the great story. I think we spoke to Vicky before, and she was saying that on the bus to that first All Ireland, you know, Dublin chasing 5 in a row, I think, in 2020, that Vicky, of course, who's your club mate in Dunboyne, had sent you a text. You were maybe sitting in front of her in the team bus on the way to the All Ireland final, and she dropped you a quick text. We're going to win this game. Like, positive affirmations like that is just what makes this Meath team so great. That's what strikes me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think me and Vic could be a bit weird like that now. With texts when I was just in front of her on the bus. But yeah, no, there's full truth in that. I think we just had a feeling that year, like the weeks building up to the All Ireland final, were some of the best weeks of my life, and I think just preparing for it, we put so much work into it. To be fair, our management, you know, hours and hours and hours of work, you know, looking at Dublin, looking at ourselves, you know, looking at different things to try and motivate us. Now, not that we needed too much motivation, but you know, we just put an awful lot of work into it, and you know, come the night before the game, I knew we were ready, and whether that was, you know, to be a couple of points off them or whatever, but I knew we weren't going to be too far away from it all. But I just had this feeling that it was going to be a good day, and that, you know, we were going to pip them. And you know, I don't think that's cockiness. I think it's just confidence in the team that we had. You know, the spirits are really, really high. It was a great environment to be around, and I definitely had a good feeling about that. Last year, pretty similar. I think we had, you know, we probably hadn't performed to our best throughout the championship at all, but I knew coming into that Kerry game that, you know, we I suppose we'd kind of sorted ourselves out a little bit in terms of not getting the best out of ourselves, and we were ready going into that game as well. I suppose you kind of just get this feeling maybe, and sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't, but we've been lucky the last 2 years that it has.
I don't know if you're a soccer fan, Emma, or you were watching City-Spurs last night.
I wasn't, unfortunately, no.
You might not have seen the post-match interview with Pep Guardiola then, where he's like losing the plot about, Man City have lost the hunger, the fire is gone. Arsenal have the fire, we don't have the fire anymore. And I was thinking about it in relation to chatting to you this morning. I'm not saying it's quite as dramatic as that, but do you chat about like the success sating the thirst for more, or is that just, you kind of touching it there, but is that just a given that no, we want to win, we want to create a dynasty here?
Yeah, I think a lot of people say that when you lose it makes you hungry, but I think when you win it makes you hungrier. I do think that. I think we've had our days where we've come out on the wrong side of things, but that feeling that you get when the final whistle blows in an All-Ireland final it's a feeling like no other, and I think you kind of have to bottle that up in a way and use it to motivate yourself at times. And I think I was only saying the other day, especially at this time of year, you're running in the slog, you're doing hard running sessions, there's not much football going on, and you kind of just have to use this, use that feeling that we experience in Croke Park to get you by. A lot of the time we kind of say to ourselves, we're running up and down in a bog, we're saying, pretend you're running Croke Park, pretend you're running to get that last ball at the end of the game. So I think you kind of have to use, moments like that to your advantage. So yeah, I think, it does sound like a cliche, but we've learned that over the years, you can have an end goal, which is obviously to win the All-Ireland final at the end of the year, but you really do have to take every game as it comes. We're all about building on our performances. You're never going to get that perfect performance, but if you improve, every game, you're going to go far. And I think that's what we do an awful lot of the time. And just building, and hopefully, we can do the same again this year.
Well, look, you'll renew rivalries with the Dubs again tomorrow, Emma. I think it's 5:15 on TG Cahir as well, or up in St Clair's and DCU for anyone who wants to head along to the Lidl Ladies National Football League game. Listen, best of luck for the league campaign and the championship ahead, and no doubt we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Emma Duggan there.
That was interesting, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I was trying to sort of leverage in the old Pep angle there, but in fairness...
No, I liked it. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Right, that's almost it from us for this morning, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Thanks for being with us over the last few hours. Not quite done yet. Back on Monday, of course, as well, with our performance rankings, which should be interesting. Some big ties over the weekend. Will Joy Carberry be in red or green?
He'll definitely be wearing red during the match anyway. But
Ross Byrne, it'll be... I'll shut up now. Alan Quinlan is going to be back as well to review the weekend's rugby. Don't forget to tune into Off the Ball over the weekend, and tonight as well. We're going to have live Premier League over the weekend. Heineken Champions Cup action as well. We'll have Munster on Sunday, and right now we're going to leave you with Curtis Fleming. He was talking about the decision around John Yems. He was on with Nathan all around the issue of racism in football from the show last night. Enjoy and have a good weekend.
So we're joined on the line by the former Republic of Ireland international and the current Bristol City assistant manager, Curtis Fleming. Good evening, Curtis.
How are you, Nathan? How are you doing?
I'm okay. So you're on to discuss the story surrounding the former Crawley town manager John Yems, who earlier this month was banned from football for 18 months after he admitted to one charge and was found guilty of 11 other charges of racist abuse towards his players. The FA report was published earlier this week. It said that Yems used offensive, racist and Islamophobic language and joked that a Muslim player was a terrorist. The full details are fairly shocking. They describe how Yems used a racial slur to describe some of the club's black players, deliberately mispronounced a name to make it sound like a racially offensive term. He used a racial stereotype to two black players who were playing darts. One player feigned illness in order to avoid coming into the club because of his banter about him eating curry. A Muslim player became the subject of jokes about being a terrorist. He was asked if he slept with a gun, if he carried a bomb in his bag. He used racial stereotypes around jerk chicken, a dish associated with the Caribbean. And it goes even further than that. He called black players Zulu warriors, referred to an Asian player as a suicide bomber, and even deliberately mispronounced Arnold Schwarzenegger's name, so it ended sounding like the N-word. Remarkably, despite all of that, the FA Disciplinary Commission accepted that Mr. Yems was not a conscious racist. Nevertheless, Mr. Yems' banter undoubtedly came across to the victims and others as offensive, racist and Islamophobic. Curtis, I said there the details of what John Yems said are shocking, and I was certainly stunned that sort of behaviour could still exist within a club. You're still very much involved with football. Were you shocked reading the details of exactly what John Yems was accused of?
Yes, I was. Because I just think of all the work that's been gone inside, the inside of football at clubs, at some of the associations, and saying what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. The biggest thing about what you're saying, Nathan, is you saying you were shocked, and it's brilliant that people are shocked by it. It's unacceptable, and banter, that's another thing. It makes me a little bit angry, if I'm honest. Whose banter is it? The person who's saying it thinks it's banter, does he? But did he really know how the person on the receiving end of it's going to react, or going to feel? And I think the position that you're in as a manager, or you're one of the decision makers at a club, you're in a quite powerful position. And for me, it looks a bit of bullying as well, knowing that maybe these lads can't come back and can't touch me. But it was that bad that the players got together and made the complaint, which is fantastic. Because years ago, I honestly would say that a lot of players wouldn't, because they'd fear for their career in the future. Could be branded a troublemaker, but it wouldn't have affected them, and they wouldn't have said anything. So I think it's very brave. It's unacceptable what he did, and I think it's come out as well today that he's saying he needs an apology. So it's a bit of crazy stuff for me.
Let's listen to that then. John Yems was on TalkSport earlier today with Jim White. Jim White obviously put the accusations and the allegations and the full details of the report to John Yems. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
Well, let's bring it right up to date, John. The Commission accepted that you are not a conscious racist. John, what would you say to people this morning who'd push back on that? Who would say, John Yems, we know what you are. You're racist.
Listen, to be quite honest with you, I don't know where this conscious racist is coming from, because it was, to me, it was cut and dry, and I don't really know the meaning of that. I've got to be quite honest with you. I'm not trying to be a thicko here. I just don't know what it's all about. I'm dragged through the worst experiences of my life in my total time in football. I've worked with black players, I've worked with white players, I've worked with every race, I've worked in most countries. And some of the things that I've been accused of saying, to me, okay, some of them maybe, they've said that I used old-fashioned language. I totally agree with it. If that's the case, then that's the case. But it wasn't for me to be racist. Saying that to me when I was growing up, that's a terrible, terrible thing to say to somebody. And it's so easy to throw them accusations, because you throw enough mud and guess what, it will stick. And I find that very offensive to people to say I'm racist.
But John, do you not accept that you've done something wrong, particularly in terms of language that you've used in the past?
No. The thing that I've done wrong has been highlighted to me, and it's shown me now that there's certain things that you can't say and do. Well, so be it. If that's the rules now, and if that's what we're supposed to do, then let people know.
Is there anything you want to say this morning, John, to anyone out there who still thinks John Yems, no, he's a wrong'un?
Well, people.
Do you want to apologise, John, for any offence that you clearly have caused?
People are out there. They're going to say what they're going to say. People are out there and going to think what they're going to think. I'm only saying to you, have a look. I wasn't found to be racist. I never used racist language with intent. If anybody needs an apology, I think I do. The amount that the abuse and everything that I've been getting, when people haven't even had the courtesy to ask me, I don't think nobody's even looked at the case with any open-mindedness. And I think if you go in there's a few apologies that should be coming my way.
That's a small part of the interview. You can hear the full thing on TalkSport's website now. I think to say he's a little bit tone deaf there, Curtis, would be putting it mildly. If apologies are being handed out, I don't think he needs to be near the top of the queue. As more details come out of what he said, this old school seems to be the way he looks at it. He came up and was brought up a certain way, a little bit old school. His language is robust and industrial, and that's how he talks to every player. It's nothing to do with racism whatsoever. He talks to different players in different ways, and listen, it's football. Players need to be able to deal with it.
And it's that's the biggest thing for me. I've written down here as I'm listening to him, I'm thinking education. You need to educate himself on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in society now. You know, everyone can go back to that. I remember, and you'll remember being in company where someone has said a racist comment and said, but it's okay, I've got black friends. So that was okay, was it? It wasn't about you. We've heard football fans chanting, at stadiums, racist chants at some of the players in the opposition team where they have black players playing for them. That's unacceptable now. We know that. So the argument that happened years ago and all that, it doesn't happen now. It doesn't happen now. Another thing that jumped out was, well, if that's the rules now, what does that mean if that's the rules now? So I'll just avoid them while I'm doing my football and the rest of my life, or who I deal with. I can say what I want and do what I want. No, that's not acceptable. Football is a cross-section of society. It's a cross-section of everybody in the country. I was in the dressing room, I was thinking about it today, Croatian, Colombian, Danish, Italian, German. Do you know what I mean? And that was the cross-section of probably Europe and of the world. And there was nothing said and nothing would be allowed to be said. Our manager, Brian Robson, would not let that be said because he knows it's wrong. It's something he wouldn't say himself. So how we can go down that, and acceptance of wrongdoing is absolutely madness for me, craziness.
That's interesting. Curtis,
Sorry?
just because it's interesting there, because I was going to ask you about, say, the current setup at Bristol City and working with Nigel Pearson and the sort of training and conversations that might be happening, because what John Yems is trying to put across there is, well, actually, to say, in the late 90s, nobody knew any better. These were the sort of conversations everyone was having at the time, and I've just never stopped. I still treat people the same now as I treat then. It wasn't against the law then, and nobody told me it was against the law now. What you're talking about there is actually within dressing rooms that you were in as a player. Actually, there was an understanding of what was and wasn't acceptable.
No, there's no doubt about it, Nathan, and it wouldn't happen now. It never happened in any of the dressing rooms that I was in as a player and as a coach, working with a lot of managers, working with Ian Holloway, with Tony Pulis, working with Dougie Freeman, with Craig Hignett. That wouldn't have been acceptable in our, and the conversation wouldn't have happened. And I would have been shocked if it had happened. And if it had happened, I would have said something, but it never did. So you're saying that it's acceptable in the company or the dressing rooms that he was in. Now, I think if you're a manager, a lot of years ago, you think about how many players get a chance to become a professional player. There's 92 clubs in England, a professional club. So you get a chance to go into Crawley and you're going in and you're taking this, abuse from someone, as I said, in power. And you're thinking, well, you can get away with what am I going to do? One, it affects your life. Two, it affects the way you play. Three, you probably, you lose the love of the game. So I think everything that he's done is against society, it's against the game, it's against everything that we all stand for at the moment. And the last thing that I wrote down here was, over the last year, how many times, Nathan, has it come up on off the ball about racist incidents, Islamophobia incidents that we've all discussed happening. One of the big ones in England here was about Saka getting, when he missed the penalty. And that was huge news. So please don't tell me, you think it's all right. I never heard that it wasn't all right. It's been in the headlines. It's been talked about, the education. I work for Show Racing and Red Card. We go into schools, we go into football clubs, and we discuss. We don't go in and tell people what they have to think. We just tell them this is what is acceptable in society. This isn't what's not. We educate them. What's your thoughts on that? Why would you think like that? So for me, listening to what he said there in his interview, there's no. Is there any point in education? Because he's saying that he's not in the wrong. Everybody else is saying that he is. And I think that's the biggest thing. Don't get too hung up on him. We just have to all know that that's not right. And if you're listening to this now, or you've listened to what he's had to say today, that you think, I tell you what, that's unbelievable.
he did also imply in that interview that there were 4 players who were let go from the club, and maybe that was an underlying reason that these accusations suddenly came out. And as we saw and heard there's absolutely zero contrition, which makes it all the more remarkable, it feels, that the FA disciplinary committee decided that he was not a conscious racist. Now, I understand that they have to probably work within certain parameters, and ultimately the difference between a conscious and unconscious racist in terms of suspension, if they decide and they rule that you are a conscious racist, it's probably going to be a permanent ban from football. But because, as they said, in his eyes, it was just banter, he was an unconscious racist, he was able to get away with what was just a 15-month ban. And the way football exists, would you rule out him ever working in football again? Would you rule out him ever working in football again from the football industry that you know?
Well, there's no doubt. I can't see anybody hiring, and if they did, it's going to, it's going to cause absolute, major problems for whatever club it is. When you think about Crawley sacking him, really at the end of the day, if they had have heard that, and maybe Crawley haven't, but could they have got in there earlier and to understand that there must have been people around and in the dressing rooms, in the canteens, on the buses that heard this sort of language being said, and nothing was said because the manager was the man in power. The people have to pay and they have to work and they have to do that. We have to know now that whatever he's doing is wrong, and that it's unacceptable for what happens. For him to get another job in football in the world, it's great to say, Nathan, we've heard it, I've worked with black players, I've worked with Asian players, I've worked in different countries, I've worked with this. But have you showed those people the same respect? That's the biggest thing. You're calling people for the colour of the skin, the nationality, the religion, then there's something wrong. So who now would take him in to do a job? And people say he's saying he thinks he's being victimised. What he doesn't know is that he has really put a real dark stain on football, on the game of football, because football isn't that. We're fighting every day. We're fighting every day to make it a more level playing field for coaches, for players. Would you want to play football? Say you're a rising star now. Say you're a rising star and you're coming through and you're playing, and this coach, first coach you have, is calling you this and calling you that. Whether I'm a very proud black Irishman, I'm very proud of it. But if someone saying to me, go back to your own country, what colour, look at you, look at this, and saying the N-word or something like that, that puts you off football. It's putting people off the game that we all love. So how he gets another job for me, I don't know. And I think there would be to be protests all over. I think if he ends up going in anywhere else.
Incidents like this do spark that conversation about the bigger picture of racism in football, but it is a very personal thing then for all of those players who were involved and are on the receiving end of it. You've been on this show before and spoke very eloquently about the impact racist incidents had on you, and that the words and that every use of a name was like a little slash of a knife. And reading some of the details, the players aren't named personally, but player 4 was a 22-year-old half Indian, half Irish footballer. And he was the player who was so upset by the way Yems spoke to him that he was feigning illness so he wouldn't have to go back to the club. Like, that's a career. That's a 22-year-old who had all the talent in the world to become a professional footballer, who was doing everything right, and then ended up in the wrong dressing room with the wrong man, who was destroying his career with his words. Like, that is the impact. And for that then to be ruled as somehow as not being conscious racism, like the kick it out have been very strong, that it's a real kick in the teeth for the victims here. That sort of language been used in the ruling. Like, there are people behind all of this.
For me, Nathan, I think the biggest thing that we've done and that we can do is have discussions like this. That's the biggest thing that we can do. We know one of the associations, a panel have gone and met and said, and then that shows that they're not in line with what everyone else is thinking in the game and outside of the game. My heart goes out to somebody who's 22 who gets a chance. I was working in a shop in Tolga Street at 21, 22, hoping, dreaming that I might get a chance because everyone had said I should have gone and I shouldn't have. Now imagine I had gone over to Middlesbrough at that time And my first experience would have been having a coach like that. Luckily enough for me, I hadn't. And it gave me a place to flourish. It gave me a safe haven away from my home to go and try and make my dream come true. That's what that guy is doing. He's taking dreams away. He's taking dreams away from some young lad who's 22 who wants to go. And he wants to play at Old Trafford. He wants to play for Ireland. That's what it is. And even deep down, the effect that it has on your health and your life as it is. What is he doing now? Has he retired from football? What is he doing now? So for me, that's how deep it runs. And I think that what this does is, yes, we don't agree with the ruling, but what we have done is we've opened it up. We've put it into the public forum. And now we're saying to them, are you sure? Are you really? Are you in line with the way society, with football is? As human beings, as an Irish guy, an Asian guy, an English guy, are you really ruling that it's not conscious? Because I know that I wouldn't walk out on the street and say any of the things he said. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can do. So I think there's going to be major repercussions after this.
How do you feel about that line in the report then? I keep going back to that line about conscious racism, which basically seems to be the FA Commission saying that you can say something racist, but that doesn't make you a racist.
Yeah, well, for me, it's for me to listen to that is, we look up the board, we look up the people, we look up the people in a higher office for a way to lead us. And I know what I can say and what I wouldn't say. You know that as well, Nathan. You know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So as soon as anything like that comes out of your mouth, it means it's inside you. It's deep in there, and at that moment in time, you thought it was okay to say that. So I think that is in you, and whether it's down to education. When you speak to a lot of kids, it's a wonderful thing. We go in and we speak to kids, and they hear the words, and we explain some of the words that they hear. And sometimes they go back and said, I said to my dad that's not right, you can't say that. And the dad goes, really, can I not? Okay. And that's what it is, and it's education, because no one's born a racist. But for me, a 63-year-old man saying the things he said to young men, aspiring athletes, aspiring youth, aspiring kids who want to go on and have a good life themselves, not just football. We're not talking about just football now, Nathan. We're talking about every workplace in the world. We're talking about every workplace. And many kids are going to work and thinking, oh my God, I hope this 8 hours flies around quickly because I'm getting these racist comments, or I'm being bullied from a religion, or I'm being bullied from my nationality. So that's what it is. And for people to say at 63, it doesn't matter what age, I'm only saying that because that's the age of John. But I just think it's something that you can't say and you shouldn't say. And why you shouldn't say. There's enough information out there. There's enough forums. There's enough things on TV. There's enough things on social media. You can find anything out in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So please, how they say that they think that is, unconscious or conscious, for me, it's wrong. If it's said, it's meant.
The line there where he was saying he didn't understand that term and not being a bit of a thicko, again, trying to imply, well, listen, I'm just not educated enough to know about this, which I can't imagine is a line he used when he went into the interview with Crawley Town and said, I'm just not particularly educated about anything. He would have sold himself very, very well. There is a culture issue as well around the power of the manager. And as you say, this didn't go isolated. He didn't take a player off into a dark corner and abuse them. He actually felt very comfortable openly talking like this around the dressing room, around the training ground, around the club facilities. And that fear that is within clubs across all staff, it seems, of upsetting the manager, that he has total power over the players. That's something that every club can learn from out of this, that actually you have to have a culture in place that people who are fearful, that they can speak openly. From what you're seeing around football, and listen, you can only talk from your own experiences, is that culture still in place at a lot of clubs where the manager is the almighty and that they rule and that nobody ever dares step out of line? Or are clubs becoming a bit more more modern and like more modern workplaces, and that there is proper HR procedures in place for a starter?
I would come back to that, Nathan, on both points. It's kind of a yes and a no. I think that the managers now, especially with their the life term as a football manager at any club, need to go in and need to be in control and need to know what they're doing. Which again, I think is the manager will make a lot of decisions. He will, a lot of managers will talk about what the club, what way the pathway is going to be for the club, the way they want the club, what is this club all about, what do we stand for? And I think they have to live by that. So I do think that the managers are in a very, very powerful position. As I said to you, I've worked with a lot of managers. I've worked for under a lot of managers as a player and as a coach. The other thing I would say is that I think what's happened in a lot of football clubs now, there's a lot more dialogue. I think there's a lot more dialogue. I think people are more open now to talk and to speak up and to say things. I think years ago it was at a lot of clubs you just got on with it. You got the head down and you got on what you did. I'm not saying that it was racist or anything. What I'm saying is you just got your head on and you went. But now the clubs are a lot more open than they were. So I think that I would hope, especially Bristol City now, and I really believe that nothing like that could happen at our club. And that's from the ownership. They set the standards. The manager may go and may pass, but no one's bigger than the club. And the club have to do that. And then no one is bigger than the FA, because the clubs can't do anything without the FA, without the Football Association. And they need to put a set of guidelines out there saying the yard.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Have you subscribed?